5 seconds to go. They center. It's on goal. Gets knocked back to the corner. And the Blue Jackets are going to get it there and beat the Blues 2-1. And 2 consecutive seasons, the Blues have found 0 points against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
The lack of urgency in our group is what's hurting us with our consistency. You look at the way we came out against Anaheim, there was a direct purpose to what we were doing. Tonight, there was not. It was a wait and see. And that urgency, us fearing losing, is something that's got to become part of our fiber if we're going to get to the consistent level we want to be at.
That is Alex Ferrario. He's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. That voice you just heard was Jim Montgomery following the Blues' loss once again on Saturday night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They lose this one 2-1. Wasn't that close in terms of the score. They score with 10 seconds left. It was a 2-0 game. Colton Parayko puts one in, though. And, Alex, I didn't think they played poorly necessarily. They just lost again, and this is becoming a theme. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that this is the stretch run that you really got to get going, and they've lost 3 out of 4 since then, including 2 straight losses against the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team that you don't want to be losing to. This time last year, Alex, at the same point in the season, they were 22, 20, and 2. This year, at this point in the season, they are 20, 20, and 4. You have a worse record right now than you did at this point in the season a year ago. And yet, the team has indicated this is a season where they need to make the postseason. They've made moves accordingly. They added Cam Fowler. They went out and made the signings via the offer sheets. So what's going on? Why does it feel to me, correct me if I'm wrong on this, why does it feel like this is a team at a crossroads for this season? Not long term, but for this season.
Well, it's at a crossroads because this is supposed to be a winning month. And the reason you're at this moment is because you've lost a couple of games that you should have won. The Minnesota Wild, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, maybe you lose one of those, but within that span, if you lose one and win the other 2, we're talking about at some point a 5 or 6 game win streak. And now you're still at this 500 point with probably the biggest portion of your schedule coming up with 2 against Calgary and 1 against Utah. And I really believe Jim Montgomery's comments are very telling of where this team is at. The fear of losing in terms of what he is talking about was that third period, specifically when you pulled the goaltender. Like it's 6-on-4 when you had the opportunity, which this team has scored 3 empty net pulled goaltender goals this season. So it's been 6-on-4, or 6-on-5. They've scored 3 goals under Jim Montgomery. But when they pulled that goaltender to try and bring it within 1 with 3 minutes left, there were guys that were skating in odd positions. Pucks were just thrown in just dead zones in terms of the offensive zone. Passes were off. There was no chemistry by that group. And I think what Jim Montgomery is saying there is the Blues felt the pressure. The Blues felt the moment, and it was too big for them. And that's a recipe for disaster if you're a team that says you're a playoff squad. You've got to figure out how to handle losing. And honestly, what these last couple of seasons have been is why you want to find a way to get to the playoffs. Because once you get that stink in the locker room, you're not getting it out. And it felt like that moment against the Columbus Blue Jackets in the third period when you're down by 2 goals and you can't even get any chemistry on a power play. That was the moment that I'm sure Jim Montgomery was like, we've got bigger issues to work through right here. That's the crossroads moment. You're at a time where the Robert Thomases, the Jordan Kyrous, the Pavel Buchneviches, the Colton Paraykos, they've got to find a way to push this team over that hump because in that moment, you crumbled.
After 44 games last year, so this point in the season, last year's team had a 7 out of 8 stretch and a 6 out of 7 stretch. They won 7 out of 8 and they won 6 out of 7 after this point in the season. They had, at this point in the season, a better record. And they still finished with 92 points, which I don't think would be good enough this year in the Western Conference as currently constructed to be able to get you into the postseason. Alex, are you still confident that this team has a run at it that is necessary to be able to get into the postseason?
Yeah, but my optimism is waning.
Sure.
I actually think 92 points is good enough to get into the playoffs. Unless one of Vancouver, Calgary, Utah go on some type of run, all of these teams are playing 500 hockey. And Vancouver's 4 points up on you right now. One of those teams is going to have to put a Detroit Red Wings run together. Do I think the Blues are going to win 7 in a row? They haven't been able to show me that, so it's hard for me to sit here and remain positive that it's going to happen. I'm at the point now where fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I had to think about it for a minute before I jacked that saying up.
I thought you were about to go
anyways.
with... It's all right.
What were you going to think?
I thought you were about to go with the version from The Office.
The Michael Scott one? Yeah. Strike 3. You're whatever he says. Anyway, I'm at the point now where you have to prove me otherwise. And this is it. Like, the confidence is there because can you take both games against Calgary and then go to Utah and put a 3-game win streak together? That's it. Because if you can't do it in this next 3, you're bleeped because the rest gets even more difficult.
The reason that I have a hard time just like talking about the Blues relative to the rest of the Western Conference, man, so in your division, Winnipeg has 61 points. Minnesota, 58 points. Dallas, 55 points. Colorado, 53 points.
Oh, yeah, you're fighting for the last wild card spot.
There is one spot that the Blues are fighting for right now. Vancouver, with 2 fewer games played, has 4 more points than you. Again, 2 fewer games played.
And they're currently
4 more
infighting.
points. Calgary, 3 fewer games played, 3 more points than you. Alex is right. These next 2 games are basically must-wins. Like, you could find yourself completely buried. The Calgary Flames, after these next 2, could have 7 more points than you while playing 3 fewer games. I don't know how you come back from that.
That's, if I'm honest,
At this point in the regular season.
If I'm Doug Armstrong, that's my season. Because, yeah, I mean, now you're trying to leapfrog 2 teams, and one just got an 8-point swing on you with 3 games in hand. You have to take 3 or 4 points in this next 2. You have to. If you don't, I mean, it's an uphill battle. And then you've got Utah. If you lose that Utah game and you didn't get the job done against Calgary, now Utah might leapfrog over you. And now there's 3 teams that you're going up against. So this week is the season for the Blues, it feels like.
Man, and that is a tough place to be in, and they could have avoided it. It was so not easy, so simple to avoid. The 2 games against Columbus, like, it's just taking care of the bad teams on the schedule again, man. And that's where I think it comes back to what Jim Montgomery had to say post-game, which is that they're lacking this urgency. And he had another quote on it. He doubled down. He was asked about who leads the charge in finding that urgency. Here was his response to that.
It's the whole group, and it's led by me, you know. I'm disappointed in myself that I haven't been able to push this group to that level of mental preparation. That's on me.
That was I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed kind of an answer, Alex.
That's 2 post-game pressers where I felt like Dad has been really disappointed with me.
And
been there.
I don't blame him in being disappointed in this group. They should be better than what you saw. They should be better than what we have seen over the past couple of weeks in the stretch that we all acknowledged was incredibly important for them to potentially get into the postseason. And so it comes back to this question to me, Alex. I feel like we've been asking these exact same questions for 3 years now with this core group of players. And it's the consistency. It's not a question of can they reach that ceiling. Yes, Robert Thomas can at some point, if he has the right wingers with him, be a 100-point player. I still believe that to be true. I think Jordan Kyrou on a really good team could be a guy that scores 35-plus goals on that second line if you put him into the right role. Pavel Buchnevich, we know him to be a good player. Dylan Holloway, hot damn, look at that. Colton Parayko has found his role. And yet, these core group of players have been here. And they're the same guys we've been talking about. And the supplementary pieces have changed out. These are like a totally different group of players around them than what we saw over the past few years. And it's the same conversation that we're having at the same time in the season against the same quality of opponent. So if we keep having these same conversations, at some point, doesn't there have to be a more dramatic measure if this continues the rest of the way?
I think that's why they brought in Jim Montgomery when they did and why they were so aggressive. Because for the longest time, it's felt like, yeah, but do we have the right players? But guess what? You can't judge the right players if you don't have the right coach taking care of them. And when you moved on from Craig Berube, it just felt like Drew Bannister was a placeholder. And why you can't stick with a placeholder is because you don't get a good evaluation of your players. I think Jim Montgomery is going to give you a very good idea and sense of that. That game against Columbus, your best players needed to take care of business, and they didn't. You had 2 opportunities, and I know you got the power play late, but to me, that was just moot and point. It was done. You missed the opportunity early in the game. If Thomas, if Kyrou, if Booch, if Braden Shen, if those guys can't get you over the hump against these teams, then yeah, you have to have serious conversations of like, okay, we need to still establish this winning culture, and it has not been there for 3 years. What's missing? And that's where I feel like Jim Montgomery is able to give an honest assessment after 41 games or however many he's going to coach.
All right, T-Bone, go ahead. Throw it in here. We know you've been waiting for it. Hey, this is who they've been all year. Why are you guys surprised? Go ahead. Let's go.
Didn't you read Dom's piece, which are words that I never thought I'd say?
Yeah, I know. I did read Dom's piece, and somehow they're still too inconsistent, even though all the numbers are up under Jim Montgomery. And look, I think what you guys just raised the question of about their core is totally fair because I mean, for a retool, I feel like you've gotten a lot of good answers on some young players, right? Dylan Holloway's been awesome. Zach Bolduc's had his ups and downs, but he looks like he's going to be a pretty solid third-line winger. Jake Neighbors has solidified himself as, hey, that's who he was from last year. Maybe the goals won't be there, but that's who he is. But yet you still continue to lose. Oh, and I didn't even mention Philip Broberg, who's been really good.
Yeah.
Yet you continue to lose some of the worst teams in the NHL. And maybe that's a little unfair for Columbus. They've been better than they were last year.
They're not one of the worst teams in the NHL.
But that's a team you should beat if you're going to be a playoff team. I also saw this team lose to the Buffalo Sabres.
They are one of the worst teams in the NHL.
At some point, this does come down to why is the core not getting it done? And that hasn't changed for 3 years. They haven't changed and gone on any kind of run here just in this year alone. Yeah, they're not a playoff team. Just point blank and period. This is not a playoff team, and they don't have the pieces to get them over the hump to do so.
The Blues, Alex, you're right. The Blue Jackets are not necessarily one of the worst teams in the NHL. They would be a lot worse, though, if they didn't continue getting these wins against the Blues.
Yeah.
That's a big part of this.
I mean, let's be fair. They've won 8 of their last 11 games. They've only played the Blues twice. They have beat Winnipeg. They have beat Edmonton. They've picked up some good
times,
wins.
Though?
Well, they didn't get them twice on the schedule.
Exactly.
They've also scored like the second most goals in the National Hockey League in the last 10.
They scored 2.
They played 2 against the Blues and only scored 8 goals.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Damn it!
So one of the problems here is you continue to have these types of situations that we're talking about. And until that gets fixed, this team's not going to be a playoff contender. I want them to be. I desperately want them, personally and professionally. It would be very good for us if the St. Louis Blues get into the postseason this year. I
don't disagree with that notion.
It's difficult to foresee a scenario unless things change where they get there. All right, with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys want to get involved in the show, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. You can check us out on YouTube, as always, at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. In about 15 minutes, the latest as the world turns with Nolan Arenado. I know all of you are waiting with bated breath to find out what happened over the weekend in regards to him. Well, we'll tell you in 15 minutes. But coming up next, it was a pretty crappy weekend of football on the NFL side of things, Alex. That all came to its conclusion last night with a great game between the Commanders and the Buccaneers. What did we learn from it? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
Hi, Alex Ferrario here. We are in the thick of the winter weather driving season, so if you haven't winterized your vehicles yet, now's the perfect time to schedule an appointment with our good friends over at Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. And they've got hot January deals on new sets of tires and expert auto service. You can save big at any Dobbs store location, including their newest one, which is open up at the Lake of the Ozarks, and they're going to have their next store opening at the end of this month on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. Dobbs has been serving drivers like us for nearly 50 years, and when they opened their doors back in 1976, impressive and important. I hope it means something good for you too. Make sure you count on Dobbs' team of experienced ASE certified technicians to service your vehicles right the first time, including routine and preventative maintenance and complex diagnostic and engine repairs. Let the tire and service pros at Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers take care of you by taking care of all of your family vehicles. And be sure to check out Dobbs' money-saving new year, January 2025 deals on tires and auto service. Check it out. Dobbs. Go to Dobbs.com or at one of the many Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers locations. Happy 2025 from your friends at Dobbs, the real deal for real deals since 1976.
Is that guy okay?
No. I think he lost his... That man will not be broadcasting the next game.
Did he just have a heart attack? I think my favorite thing in life is hearing NFL analysts for their teams. They're the biggest homers you will ever hear, and it's fantastic. So that was the Commanders radio network as the Commanders win last night 23-20.
By the way, off of a doink kick that almost missed it.
I nearly had a heart attack last night because I picked the Commanders in this game, and I have them going to the NFC Championship game. So them losing would have been really bad for my health as well, so I get that guy. I understand where he's coming from there.
My throat just hurts. Oof.
Alex, the Commanders in the second half yesterday, their drives. Field goal from the 4-yard line of Tampa Bay. So they drove all the way into Tampa's territory and then kicked a field goal. Turnover on downs from the Tampa 3-yard line. Got all the way down into their red zone and then turned it over, unfortunately, from the 3-yard line. T-Bone was really mad about that decision. We'll get into that in a little bit. Touchdown, and then a field goal as time expired that doinked off the upright.
Kicks in the door! I am going to the next round!
Most of this weekend stunk. Like, let's just be frank about it. It was not a good weekend of NFL football. That game was spectacular, though, and the Commanders showed me something. Alex, I bought into them out of necessity. Somebody has to come out of this godforsaken conference, and so I'll go with the Commanders as a team that can maybe go on a little bit of a run here. Did they show enough to you yesterday that proved that they are capable of going on that kind of a run?
Yeah, they did. And it's all because of Jaden Daniels. Like, it's all because of that dude having ice in his veins. There were a couple of plays where there was nothing available, and he found a way to roll out of coverage and give himself a couple of extra time to make plays. Some of it seems very YOLO-esque, like that one throw that he got to Terry McLaurin. That was just like a heave and hope something comes down with it. But to his credit, he's targeting them, and he's hitting them, and they're coming up with those plays. The second half told me everything I needed to know about the Washington Commanders. And I don't think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a great team. I frankly expected them to lose this game, but you know what you're getting in Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield's going to find a way to, whatever it takes, keep his team in it.
I love that guy.
I do, too.
I love watching him play.
And Jaden Daniels was better than him. I don't know if that's saying a lot, but to me, Jaden Daniels has the pulse of his team. It feels very C.J. Stroud-esque from last year. We've mentioned that a lot. And the way that the NFC is this year, I do think Washington can find a way to get to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I must be the lowest on the Commanders coming out of that game because I don't see a way that they can get through Detroit. I don't think their defense will be able to come up with enough stops against the Detroit Lions offense. I mean, they gave up 20 yesterday to Tampa Bay, and Baker didn't even have that great of a game. So I think this team is fun. I think they have a chance against Detroit, but I think that's where their path ends. I just don't know if they have the defense to get enough stops when it is required when you're in the playoffs. And when you go up against that Detroit Lions offense, man, you're going to have to slow them down because they're going to put up 30, and that's like a bad day for them. So I just don't know if they've got the defense. Offensively, they're there. Like, Daniels looked great last night. They were able to get Terry McLaurin involved early on, and they had a couple of other pieces in that wide receiver room come up big for him. Yeah. Ertz wasn't even a player really in that game like I thought he was going to be.
They made Austin Eckler a playmaker for him at times, too.
Tommy Brown had more yards than he has at any point in his NFL career, and he did it in the biggest game of his NFL career.
Yeah, like, the offense looks good. And I think that can give them a chance against the Lions because their defense is so banged up. But I just don't trust their defense to get stops against Detroit. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Jaden Daniels now has more games in his NFL career where his team has 0 punts and 0 turnovers. He's had 3 of those such games, including last night, than Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, and Patrick Mahomes had in their entire NFL careers. Let me say that one more time.
Mahomes retired.
Jaden Daniels, 0 punts, 0 turnovers. He's had that 3 times already. He's a rookie. This is his first year of his NFL career. He did that 3 times, and that is more often than Brady, Montana, Manning, and Mahomes have in their entire NFL careers. It's amazing what Jaden Daniels has done. We talked about this last week where if you just look at the Washington Commanders offensively and what they've been able to do, if you look at points per drive when he's out there, it is the best offense that we have seen in that regard since the 07 Patriots, which is one of the best offenses we've ever seen in our entire lives. And I think you saw that on full display last night. The only thing that held them back from scoring, 37 points in that game was them going for it on seemingly every 4th down and not getting a couple of those and turning the ball over on downs. That is something that I'm going to be fascinated about next week. Commanders versus Lions is basically going to be a 4th down conversion contest.
Oh, yeah.
No punts allowed.
I can't wait for both of those coaches.
Those punters just stay home. They don't arrive at the
They
game.
don't get to go to the sideline?
No,
wow,
man, at least they don't
Not
be there.
well, they can be holders, I guess, because I think Tress is the holder for the Commanders. But there should be no punts next week. It should just be an hey, you're running up and down the field, and we'll see who ends up getting the most stops on fourth down. I think that's what the game's going to be. T-Bone, you're right. They're going to get 30 points with the Lions, but I think the Commanders will likely get 30 points against the Lions defense as well. So I've bought in. I think they've got a really good shot against Detroit, and I look at the rest of this NFC right now, dude. Did you guys watch the Eagles yesterday?
Yeah.
Well, I had money on it, so yeah.
What happened to this team?
I don't know.
Let me ask this a different way. What happened to this offense? Because it just looks hard. It feels like every play is difficult to gain positive yards.
I don't feel like anything's changed. I feel like that's what it's been for the last 10 weeks. If it's not Saquon Barkley, then they're not moving the football. Like Jalen Hurts looked exactly what Jalen Hurts has looked like all season. He's going to give you a couple of runs. He'll make 1 or 2 passes for you, but that's going to come down to Saquon Barkley. It's going to come down to them and their defense coming up with some type of big play. I think if it comes down to, and if you get to the NFC Championship to where it's Washington versus Philly, I think Washington wins that football game. Because I saw Jaden Daniels drive down the field for a game-winning drive. I don't know if I could say the same thing for Jalen Hurts. I know he's done it in the past, but this season, A.J. Brown's not 100%. Devontae Smith is kind of hit or miss when he's on the field, and Jalen Hurts just does not have the confidence throwing the football.
Yeah, I think the Eagles can't win the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. Now, I think they can get there just because of this NFC path. Now, if the Lions...
Allen, Mahomes, or Lamar, though, once you get there.
If the Lions had their healthy defense, then I don't even know if they get to the Super Bowl.
Agreed.
But because they're so beat up defensively, I think you could see a place where the Eagles can take advantage of them. But Hurts doesn't look like a quarterback. Like, to what you're saying of, hey, Daniels led Washington down the field, I would not trust the Eagles. If the Eagles fell behind early, so just say they fell behind like 10-0 early on, it changes the whole game plan for them. And I don't know.
It's the previous version of the Ravens.
Yeah,
they are what the Ravens used to be.
And I don't know if Hurts is the guy that's going to beat you by throwing the football. I mean, yesterday he didn't do it. He's the whole reason that game was still close. And his one big play was when he had 7 seconds and nobody was even close to him, and he was able to finally pick out a wide receiver who broke open. He's not a guy that's going to beat you with his arm. And that's why I don't trust him to get them a Super Bowl championship. It all relies on Barkley.
It's so weird, though, because he used to be. Like, this is kind of a new thing for him. I don't know if the league just figured him out and learned his tendencies. Like, he's got great weapons. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert had an unbelievable play yesterday. And then Saquon is a weapon not only on the ground, but also through the air. I don't understand why this has happened the way that it has, but it feels like he's devolved as a quarterback, and he's just not the same guy that he was when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, where he was a legit weapon, both on the ground and through the air. I don't know if it's the injuries taking their toll, defenses adjusting, or what, but he does not look the same. And I'm with you guys. I think they can get to... I don't think either the Vikings or the Rams have a great chance to be able to beat the Eagles. They could, but I wouldn't pick either of them.
Agreed.
Whoever comes out of that Washington versus Detroit matchup, though, I think has a pretty good chance of beating the Eagles. And even if the Eagles come out of the NFC, which is possible, I can't deny that fact, I don't think they have any chance of beating any of the top 3 teams in the AFC. Houston, I'm just going to set aside. They're in a separate conversation. But those top 3 teams, all of them, I think would be favored by like a touchdown against this Eagles squad right now. What was your other biggest takeaway from the weekend, Alex? A game, a player, anything? We talked about the Commanders. We talked a little bit about the Eagles. What is your biggest takeaway from this wild card weekend?
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest takeaway was what we're set up for in this next round between Buffalo and Baltimore. Like, I haven't given Baltimore a lot of credit, and frankly, I want to see it in the playoffs. But watching Lamar handle that Pittsburgh defense, which wasn't very good, but I think some of that was how good Lamar was, and watching Josh Allen handle that Denver Broncos defense, I think the Super Bowl player is going to come out of that matchup this week. Unfortunately for you, buddy. I think it's going to be Bills or Ravens in the Super Bowl in the AFC. Yeah. Those two teams just seem locked in.
The Ravens feel different to me this year.
I agree.
I still don't trust them, though, because, like, that one felt good, but it was a team you've already seen twice.
Totally. And
they stink.
It could be proven incorrect next week, but as I watched those two teams, and the Bills did a really good job against a good Broncos defense. They looked really impressive yesterday. I liked the Broncos on the spread. Never close. I heard Lamar after that game. He was on the Amazon Prime post-game show, and he was talking about some of his playoff struggles previously, and he was like, I was always trying to make the big play. On every play, I was out there trying to score a touchdown, and now I've calmed down, and I just feel like with the experience that I've had previously in the postseason, now it's just about getting the next first down, just driving consistently. And that is something that is easy to say, but when you see it implemented into his game, I think you can feel it a little bit more. And I felt it in that game. We'll see what it means for them against the Bills. I liked the Bills all season long, and I'll still probably side with them just because of Josh Allen, but that game to me feels like a legit 50-50 proposition. I have no idea who's going to win, and I can't wait to watch it, man. Yep. It's going to be one of the best games that we've seen. It's up there with like some of the Bills-Chiefs matchups that we've seen in previous years. It's got that kind of hype to me.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to who's got the ball for the last drive. I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be a back and forth. I already would hit the over with that, and I think it's going to come down to who gets the last drive and does Lamar choke at some point.
T-Bone, before we get out of here, what was your biggest takeaway from the weekend?
So I agree with Baltimore, but I will say this. I still like the Chiefs this coming weekend, but we slept on the Texans a little bit. We went into that saying, hey, the Chargers, they're the team. They're going to be the one that ends up just kind of coasting through the Houston Texans. Man, that Texans defense looked really good.
The defense is really good.
And
the
CJ Stroud had an okay game. Ended up with 280 thrown in that game, 2 touchdowns, passes. I thought Stroud was okay. I don't think he was great, but I think that might be good enough for them. So we'll see. I don't think they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but I do feel like we slept on them a little bit and didn't give them their flowers, and they took care of business and kicked the crap out of the Chargers.
Yeah, somebody had to go to Twitter over the weekend, but I don't know if you saw this tweet or not. It's from somebody who is a Kansas City Chiefs fan.
Okay.
That decided to put out there that it's basically no, it's not Paul Rudd. Hold on, I got to pull it up. It's basically that
Eric Stone Street.
That the who
Taylor Swift.
No, hold on, I got to pull it up. Here it is, right here. The AFC wildcard games were horrible, but at least the Bills Ravens should be awesome. And I'll set up either Mahomes Allen or Mahomes Lamar in the AFC Championship game.
It's true.
Wow,
it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Wow, that feels
the
like
next 2 weeks in the AFC are going to be amazing. Mahomes in the AFC Championship game hosting one of those other 2 elite-level quarterbacks, and next week you get to see the elite-level quarterbacks face off against one another. It's going to be awesome.
What did Peter Parker's uncle tell him before he got shot? Spoiler.
Doesn't know.
T-Bone?
With great power comes great responsibility.
You have the power to ruin all of those players' hopes and dreams.
If I had that power, man, it would have happened by now. The
It
Chiefs
did
have won
happen.
back-to-back Super Bowls, and they're about to win their 3rd. So, let's relax.
You shut down a freaking airport. You can shut down Patrick Mahomes.
No. I ruined an airline. I did no shooting. He's Alex's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, the Red Sox clearly...
Sorry.
Those accusations will not pass on the show,
Shut down.
The Red Sox clearly want to add a 3rd baseman, and now it depends on whether or not they want that to be Nolan Arenado. We'll let you hear what their manager had to say about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues follow the Columbus Blue Jackets over the weekend 2-1. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Calgary Flames. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. News out of the NFL today, Mike McCarthy is out as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we're wrapping up NFL Wild Card Weekend as Rams take on the Vikings. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with kickoff at 7. This portion update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, as the world turns with Nolan Arenado, episode 27, I think is where we're at this point.
Man, they're almost catching up with the amount of Cardinals press conferences held in one day.
Yeah, they're getting close with Alex and T-Bone on BK. So Alex Cora loves talking about players that aren't on his team. He continues to do so. He's the manager for the Boston Red Sox.
That's tampering.
It is. He didn't specifically mention. I think the Cardinals would like that to continue.
I was like, please.
So Alex Cora was asked over the weekend. They had the Red Sox version of winter warm-up, except they've changed it a little bit. It's smaller now. They charge you $75 to get in to go.
I wonder why they did that.
Why would they do that?
So yeah,
they got booed last year.
No, they
the last 3 consecutive seasons.
Oh.
Yes.
They got to build funds for Nolan Arenado.
And not just they, the owner.
Yeah.
Oh,
So he decided we're going to change this
At least
up.
him and DeWitt will have that in common.
I was going to
this
say,
year.
I think we might actually get to see that this weekend.
So Alex Cora, the manager of the Red Sox, was asked by the assembled media about Nolan Arenado. He did not specifically mention him in this clip, but he's talking about Nolan Arenado. Take a listen.
There's a lot of talk about third basemen or second basemen, whatever. If that happens, you know, if we get to that point, before we get to that point, we'll talk to Rafi. Let's put it that way, you know, and that's the way it is, you know. That's the way I operate, you know. I've seen situations around the league that, you know, they're very late on that front, you know, and the player, you know, they don't like it, you know, and they take it personal, and we understand that part, but I think we'll do it the right way. But right now, there's no conversations. We haven't talked to Rafi about, you know, moving positions, so, you know, Rafi Devers is our third baseman.
Okay, so a couple of things here. One, that was a lot of shade at Mike Schilt. 2, for the way that they handled Xander Bogaerts last year. I think that's exactly what he's referencing there.
I would not throw shade at Mike Schilt because you know what comes from that.
2,
Brandon.
There's an easy way to shut this down if you're Alex Cora. If there's no interest from his side on either Bregman or Nolan Arenado, you simply say, Rafael Devers is our third baseman. We're planning for that to be the case heading into 2025, and we're excited to continue to move forward with an all-star caliber third baseman, a guy that we have continued to build our team around, that we have invested heavily in, and there is no reason for me to answer any other questions about third baseman because he is already on this roster. Boom. End of story. Nobody has to talk about it anymore. That is the opposite of what Alex Cora said. Instead, he said, if and when the scenario arises where we have to talk to Rafael Devers about moving off of third base, we're more than happy to have that conversation with him. Alex, it sure sounds to me, even if the front office is in disagreement with this, the manager would like to add a third baseman for the Boston Red Sox. And that manager has a whole hell of a lot of sway within that organization, more so than I think maybe any other manager in baseball. I'm not sure who the other guy would be that has as much power within the organization as Alex Cora does in Boston. I honestly don't know. But I think the Red Sox want to add a third baseman. And I don't think that the ownership group or the front office is going to be willing to give Alex Bregman what he wants. So I continue to believe the Red Sox make sense, even if I don't know why they're moving Devers, but whatever. I think this is a spot that still makes sense for Nolan Arenado, Alex. How do you feel about it?
I do, too. I think it makes sense. I still don't believe it's going to get done because I think there's a lot more that has to take place, and it sure sounds like there's going to be a little bit of back and forth of this, and by the time they finally come to a resolution, I think you might be past the time. The Arenado one makes more sense than Bregman because of the at least reported versatility of Nolan Arenado willing to play at first base. Now, I don't think they would do that, but let's say you want to go out there and Rafael Devers does want to play third base a little bit more. Well, if you go get Alex Bregman, Devers is moving to first base, and that's it. If you get Arenado, you could experiment a little bit with it. You can toy with it a little bit. And frankly, I think this is probably a lot easier for the Boston Red Sox to accomplish getting Nolan Arenado, even despite us believing it's such a hard deal to pull off, than just going out there and throwing money at Alex Bregman. Because this one, you're not having to trade a whole lot. You're basically going to try and convince the Cardinals to eat some more money. It's a win-win if you're the Boston Red Sox. I still don't believe it gets done, though, because this still feels like, from the Cardinals' perspective, they're going to make this thing a lot more difficult than it needs to be to trade him.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to know how they decide to approach this, because the managers clearly want a third base upgrade, but yet his front office does not. And the weird thing is remember last year, Cora was one of those managers that it was kind of like the Craig Counsell situation, right? Where his contract was coming up, there was a lot of speculation of, okay, is he going to leave Boston and pursue an opportunity where he thinks he can win? Maybe he doesn't believe he can do that in Boston, and then he signed the contract extension. There's even talks that he may even sit out a year or move into a front office role. So he must have some kind of conversation, whether that was with the front office or with ownership, to agree to that contract extension. Yeah, I agree. It's probably ownership. So I think he clearly is sending off the signal, we're going to get a third baseman. Where I get curious is, are they trying to hold out and hope that Bregman's market comes lower? Because there was a lot of buzz over the weekend about, Pete Alonso maybe only going to do a 3-year deal. Maybe Jack Flaherty and Anthony Santander have to do shorter-term deals. Are they hoping that they're going to be able to do kind of what Matt Chapman did with San Francisco? Because if they're hoping for that, maybe there's an opportunity where, because if that's what they're hoping for, to me, it signals better things for the Cardinals. Because I think somebody will come in and push over the top for Alex Bregman. Boston's not willing to do that. Boom, now they have that pivot to Nolan Arenado. But they will have a new third baseman, is my guess, by the time we get to opening day.
So Cora talked with the media in Boston. John Mozeliak also spoke yesterday on the Cardinals radio network, his typical Sunday spot. And he was asked about Nolan Arenado and the comments that he had made about Nolan earlier in the offseason. Here is what Mo had to say.
Like anything in this business, everything's sort of a time stamp in life, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time when we were talking about that, I thought pretty confidently that we had a deal in place and we were likely going to move him. Here we are, a month later, and obviously that didn't happen. And so, maybe had I known what I know today, I might not have spoken as I spoke that night. But what I said is what I said, and so you have to live with that. But lesson learned, lots of moving parts in this business, and nothing's ever for sure until it's for sure.
I wonder how Mo feels about this entire offseason if you had like a truth serum moment with him. Because
you couldn't read through all the cliches that he just threw out there at the end of that?
I think you can read between the lines pretty well there. I think he truly believed that Nolan Arenado was going to accept a deal to Houston.
And why wouldn't you? That's a team that's always a contender.
And beyond that, I wonder if he had been told previously that Arenado was interested in going to Houston, and then things shifted when Kyle Tucker was traded.
Yep, that's my read.
That's my guess on what happened is he thought Houston was a clear landing spot. Arenado had told him, or Arenado's agent had told him, we're interested in going to Houston. And then when Houston trades Tucker, he's like, whoa, wait a second. Are they blowing this thing up? The answer is obviously no. There has been no sign of that. They just didn't want to give that crazy amount of money to Tucker, who might get $400 million on the market next offseason. And now they're bringing in Nolan Arenado, which clearly indicates, no, we're not blowing this thing up. Otherwise, why would we be trading for Nolan Arenado? That wouldn't make any sense. But Arenado was spooked enough to the point where he said, I don't know, man. This doesn't feel right to me.
And the funny thing about all that
I think Mo was taken off guard by that.
I agree. The funny part about everything that you just said there is Arenado wanting to play for a contender and thinking the Astros were blowing up. Dude, they looked at you as the guy to prevent them from blowing it up, and yet you just told them, no, I don't want to come to Houston.
Yeah, well, and if you can go hindsight with Nolan Arenado, I would almost guarantee, because remember what John Denton had told us, I think he wants to wait and see what happens with Houston, but Houston went in a different direction immediately.
Of course.
If you go to hindsight of Nolan Arenado, and now you're looking at where it's like, hey, the Boston Red Sox might be interested in you, but now you got Detroit, Seattle, the Angels that would trade for you, he's probably like, damn, I should have went to Houston.
Yeah.
Because now you're stuck with St. Louis for one more year, and I say stuck because he wants to win. Cardinals ain't winning, and frankly, that's going to be a guy that a lot of people aren't going to be happy with this season.
And if he's here, it becomes even harder for them to win because of the money situation that they have self-imposed. But if they truly need to get another $20+ million off of the books, well, they will have to continue to tear down around Nolan Arenado because he's here. Because the money that they thought they were going to get off the books was his, and now it might end up having to be like Eric Fetty's or other starting pitchers that they did not previously want to trade for one reason or another. So my read on all of this remains I think Boston is the most likely landing spot. I still think the Angels are kind of lurking out there as a potential secondary option in the scenario where Boston decides either to go with Bregman or to just stick with what they have internally. But it's going to continue. The saga, I don't think, is going anywhere. Certainly by this weekend when the Cardinals are hosting winter warm-up. I don't think Nolan Arenado is expected to be there as far as I know. And we're going to be talking to Mo. We'll hear from the DeWitts. Like, all of these questions are going to be asked, and they're going to have no answers for it, which is a really tough spot for everybody to be in.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if you did put Mo on truth serum, I wonder if he thought this trade of Arenado was going to be easier. And that's even before the Astros scenario played out. Because I think he looked at this and said, if we make him a $20 million player, I mean, that's essentially what Matt Chapman is with San Francisco.
We talked about this with Kylie McDaniel. He said that's basically the value of the player.
Yeah, and I think Mo thought, I will be able to move on from that easily. And I think he's maybe a little surprised by how little of a market there is for Arenado. He had the deal with Houston in place. It gets nixed. That's totally fair for Arenado to do with it in his contract. I think Mo even probably thought there was a better pivot then after that happened. You know, I think he thought that he was going to be able to get this done 2 weeks ago before the new year had happened, and he's still sitting there going, man, I don't know what to do now because there's clearly no market for him. We're stuck in whatever happens with Alex Bregman. I think Mo's almost taken a little back by how slow this has progressed.
Well, and that's bad on Mo's part because you should have known better that this thing was going to be really difficult to pull off.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Alex Ferrario, and I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, we will answer them in the next segment. Questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now, and we will answer them here on BK and Ferrario. But first, let's start with this. Some breaking news in the NFL. Mike McCarthy is, quote, not expected to return, end quote, in Dallas next year. He is now set to become a free agent. In other words, Mike McCarthy's been fired by the Dallas Cowboys. That's another way to phrase that. Adam Schefter adding that McCarthy is expected to be a candidate for both the Chicago Bears and the New Orleans Saints. Alex, to me, this feels like a no-brainer. I know people will not like it, and I don't blame them for it, but this feels like the Bears written all over it, dude.
I don't disagree with you, and I do fall into that category of I don't like it. I don't think that's a smart move. I think that could blow up in their face, but if you're the Chicago Bears, what better options do you have out there? You got to get somebody who can establish a culture, and whether you like Mike McCarthy or not, one thing he can do is he can establish a culture. So I think that's putting a Band-Aid over the problem, and I think that's going to probably become an issue in about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think right now if you can't get Ben Johnson, then I'm open-minded to going with whether it be Mike McCarthy. We've mentioned Pete Carroll's name connected to that Bears job. If you can't get Ben Johnson, who feels like the coach there for the next 5+ years if you hired him, go get the guy that's probably there to establish the culture and can kind of be that in-between coach. And McCarthy, Pete Carroll, those guys, they can really solidify that culture for 2 to 3 years before you then go out and get that next guy.
That's where I'm at. He's at least a placeholder. I don't think he's the guy that's going to get you to the Super Bowl, but he might be the guy that gets you Caleb Williams to the next level, and that's the single most important thing for your organization. I think Todd Monken would also be a really good hire by them, the current offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. He's done an amazing job of developing Lamar Jackson. He's a little bit more quirky. Like, he's not your typical football guy. Like, he's kind of opposite personalities of Mike Vrabel, for example, and I think that might fit better with Caleb Williams. But I think it probably ends up being Mike McCarthy for better or for worse. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, from the 314, who do you guys think will be the next Cowboys head coach? They're a really hard team to come up with a list for. It's hard to know who's going to be okay with reporting to Jerry Jones and then him doing a press conference outside of the locker room every game.
I honestly have no idea. If I'm a coach that kind of wants to take that next step in my career, I'm not going to Dallas. Somebody brought up Dion.
Yeah, I was about to say. I'm going to say it. Are we sure?
If Dion's going anywhere, he's going to go where his son's going to get selected.
Yeah, but nobody wants him.
So Dion's going to be at Colorado.
Are we sure? And the reason why is because he played for Jerry.
I get it, but you think
he's got Jerry and coach under Jerry's different.
But do you think Dion's going to take advice from or take Jerry having all those press conferences?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Not Dion with his ego.
I think Dion would be fine with it. I think the question is, would the Cowboys be interested in Dion? I think Dion would love to go to the NFL. Now that his kids are graduated, I don't think there's anything holding him to Colorado. There's no like emotional ties to Boulder.
What?
It's a beautiful city.
Would you like to go there?
Yes, absolutely. Boulder is amazing.
Right, Boulder radio stations, if you're listening.
It's like 45 minutes outside of Denver. We're good.
We'll just take new headphones for him.
I just don't know. Is that the way that Dallas is going to go?
I don't think Dion goes that way.
Yeah, they are a tough team to come up with a list for. Like, I get what you're saying with Dion. I wonder if like Kellen Moore's on that radar, but just because he played there, he was the OC there, he had success with Dak, so like that's the first name that comes to mind. I'm not telling you it's like a big sexy hire.
Can I just say too, what a move by Dallas to swat away potential teams that wanted to talk to him for 2 weeks.
I feel the opposite. I feel like they totally blundered this. Like, if you're the Cowboys, you are now 2 weeks behind in the process to interview everybody.
They jacked it up, but then they screwed over Mike McCarthy too. Like, I think both sides were very stupid in this whole process.
I feel like McCarthy's in a better spot than the Cowboys, though, because McCarthy at least has 2 teams that want him.
Yeah.
He probably knew it all along, and so he's like, okay, well, if it doesn't work out here, whatever, I'll just go to Chicago. And if you're the Cowboys, you have 0 interviews that you have done so far, unless they just know who they're hiring. To your point on the Kellen Moore thing, like maybe their plan is to hire Kellen Moore, bring him back, and he's going to be the next head coach. It's a weird plan.
What I hope is happening
process was bad.
Jason Garrett, bring him back.
What I hope is happening is Jerry Jones is overconfident, thinking he's going to throw all the money at Ben Johnson, and Ben will want to come there, and then Ben gives him the middle finger when they offer it to him.
I don't think Ben Johnson's taking that job.
I wouldn't if I'm Ben Johnson. I'd stay in Detroit before I'd go take that Dallas job.
All right, a few more questions from the 314. Which team of the number 1 seeds do you think is more likely to lose this weekend, the Chiefs or the Lions?
Oh, I would say the Lions. I don't think the Chiefs have any chance of losing.
I agree.
I agree. I was impressed by what the Texans did over the weekend, but I still don't think they're good enough to beat the Chiefs. The Lions, it's not about how they're constructed. It's just they're dealing with a ton of injuries.
Yeah.
So I could see where they can't get any stops, becomes an offensive shootout, and they end up losing to Washington.
I think it's Detroit as well. I don't think that there's any chance that the Chiefs lose to the Texans. I know these are words that are going to eventually come back to bite me, but
you're going to be the new resident of Boulder, Colorado. You should start rooting for the Denver Broncos.
From the 314, which team at this point in the season do you think would scare the Chiefs more in the AFC Championship game, the Bills or the Ravens?
I want to say the Bills, but I think it's the Ravens. Because of their defense, because of their quarterback pressure, and because of that running game. Although James Cook is pretty dominant right now, too.
He's had a great year.
Yeah, I think the running game is going to be effective on either side.
Oh, man. I think I'm going to go Buffalo still. Josh Allen just scares me more than Lamar. And look, Lamar had a great game against Pittsburgh. Derrick Henry's a beast. I trust the Chiefs to stop Derrick Henry and force Lamar to beat him, and I don't know if he can. Josh Allen, outside of like a weird, whatever it was, 7 seconds, has almost done it. So I would lean towards Buffalo to be the one I'm afraid of.
Man, it's so funny because as I'm watching these games in the playoffs, it's all coming back to like, man, stars really matter in the postseason. Like, really matter in the postseason. And the Ravens have a couple, or excuse me, the Bills have a couple of them, but the Bills are mostly just good players.
Yeah.
They just have a lot of really good dudes. Mm-hmm. The Ravens have stars on both sides of the football. Like, offensively, Lamar and Derrick Henry are stars. On the defensive side of the ball, Marlon Humphrey, all-pro first-team caliber of player. You look at the back end of it with Hamilton, what they have there. He's a star. Matabike is a star up front. So they've got, from front to back, guys that can really step up in these big games. I have said all year the team that scares me more is Buffalo because of Josh Allen. And in my heart of hearts, I think I still believe that. But everything with my head is telling me that it's actually the Ravens that present a bigger problem for the Chiefs than the Bills do. So I don't know.
Would you say that your mind's telling you no, but your body's telling you yes?
I would say that my body is telling me one thing and my brain is telling me something different. So no, to answer your question.
T-Bone, you get that reference?
I know I knew what you were gonna say, but I don't know where that's from.
Okay.
I think it's a song.
All right, coming up in 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here at BK and Ferrario. But coming up next, I presented this yesterday on Twitter, and I'm curious the thoughts from our audience. 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. Have the Steelers become the Cardinals of the NFL? Historically impressive, clearly a team that others in their league have over the years tried to emulate, and yet have completely lost their way. And while being lauded nationally for consistent winning, locally you grow frustrated by the lack of any kind of a ceiling to that winning. Are they one and the same at this point? We'll answer that next year on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings as the NFL playoffs are underway, and DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Looking at tonight's playoff game, I'm going Cooper Kupp, less than 48.5 receiving yards, Puka more than half a touchdown, and Justin Jefferson more than 6.5 receptions. $10 on that can win you 40+, and DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my promo code 101WXOS. That's promo code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18+. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus award is now available. Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, this comes from Jordan Schultz, who does some really good work on the NFL. He said, for what it's worth, Bill Belichick would have been interested in the Cowboys job, and it is believed that Dallas was interested in him had he known that the position was going to become available. Belichick and his camp never received any indication during their back-channeling conversations, though, the job would open, which is partly why he ended up at North Carolina. Belichick, quote, has an excellent relationship with the Jones family, end quote. All right. Couple of things here. One, why wouldn't he still be interested in the Dallas job?
Because he's already taken another job, Brandon.
Okay. 2, who's it benefit for this to be out there? Does it benefit Belichick or does it benefit Dallas more? Because I always wonder when I see stuff like this, okay, who is benefiting from this being...
I gotta think it would benefit Dallas more, right?
I think so.
Because it's like, hey, we couldn't get Bill Belichick, but we want you. And then that coach is like, oh, I was the second choice to Bill Belichick?
I would think, like, if Belichick was willing to deal with all of the stuff that is there with the Jones family, that's what is beneficial for them, is like it being out there that, hey, look at Bill Belichick. He wants no nonsense out there, and he was okay with this. So you should be okay with it, too. I think it benefits Dallas a little bit more. So I wonder if Dallas put this out there as a little like, hey, you know,
it's not that bad.
Bill was interested in coming over here. Unfortunately, he's not available right now. So, bummer, he can't get it. But if you're Bill Belichick and you're truly interested, just take the job.
Oh, man.
Leave North Carolina. Go take the job.
He made a commitment, and he needs to stick to it.
Yeah, my guess is he wasn't all that interested.
He believes in that,
yeah.
you know?
He believes in his word.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Brandon.
Who do you guys think? What is the weirdest possible realistic hire they could make?
The weirdest?
I'm still sticking with
mine's Dabo.
that one is wild.
Pete Carroll.
Okay.
Pete Carroll's a
I
good
can
one.
actually totally see that. He's desperate. He wants a job.
And Pete Carroll did the interview for the Bears job, so they're like, oh, we don't want to keep this old coach that might be washed up. Let's go get another one.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I do like that one. I'm still sticking with what I said, their old head coach, Jason Garrett. Dude, it makes all. If Rex Ryan's is interviewing for the Jets job again, it is so Cowboys like to be like, man, we just need someone to come in here, win us 10 games, and get us to the playoffs. Who can do that? Jason Garrett.
By the way, I love the fact that Rex Ryan just keeps doubling down that he's going to get this job, calling out other teams like, I'll kick their ass in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
God, go Rex.
He was asked if Mike Vrabel is the best head coach in the AFC East, and he's like, I don't know. I think I'm going to kick his ass a couple of times over the next few years. Rex, dude, what are we doing?
Step all over him.
I like that kind of confidence, Rex. Keep it up, my man.
All right.
And then when he doesn't get the job.
So over the weekend, the Steelers did what they do. They make it to the playoffs, they win 10 games, and then get completely outclassed by whoever it is that they end up going up against in the first round of the playoffs. For the last few years, Alex, the last 5 playoff appearances for the Steelers, they have found themselves down in that game 21-0, 28-0, 35-7, 28-0, and 21-0. Those are their playoff appearances since 2017. In other words, they never had a chance in any of those games. It was over before they really got going offensively. And that was the same way over the weekend. And so Steelers fans are kind of done with it. I've seen a lot of stuff coming out of Pittsburgh where people were genuinely wondering, is this the time to go ahead and make the move with Tomlin? You don't fire him, but do you consider trading him to another team that's ready to take that next step and get themselves into contention? Whereas the Steelers are, I don't know how they move forward. This was supposed to be the year where it was like, okay, if Tomlin's ever going to take a step back and they could potentially get up into the spot where they need to get a quarterback, this is the year, because their roster wasn't all that good.
Didn't you see the report, though, of what their step forward is? Is Aaron Rodgers, if he's willing to come to Pittsburgh?
True?
That's what the report, I think I saw it on, I forget which one I saw it earlier today, but they said that if Rodgers is not going to be back with the Jets, one spot that they could turn towards is Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, I don't know what else they do. Like, if you're going to keep going this way, you have to keep putting a Band-Aid over it. It's like Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, these are your options. Sam Darnold, if he ends up leaving Minnesota, like that's all you can do if you're going to continue to try to push things forward. I think it's past time for them to take a step back.
Yeah, Andrew Whitworth, by the way, said it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, he was the one that one would make the most sense.
I agree with him if that is the direction that they're going to go. It's kind of like the Cardinals, right? If the Cardinals continue to try to push as they have over the last 5 years, like, okay, well, then Wilson Contreras makes sense. Sonny Gray makes sense. All these moves make sense. But you have to convince yourself that they're actually in it before those moves start to make sense.
I was picturing this as like the Lance Lynn signing.
Exactly. I look at that's a great comparison.
I look at it and I go, oh, really? And then I go, okay, I kind of see what we're doing here. Or
trading for Jay Happ and John Lester at the deadline, the last leg.
That worked out.
It did.
Yeah, they were a playoff team.
They were just like
the Steelers, went home.
Signing Russell Wilson worked. They got way more production out of him than what they paid for, which was $1 million. The Cardinals have become the Steelers. The Steelers have become the Cardinals. They're the Spider-Man meme. They're the same thing.
Yeah, but one makes the playoffs. One can't make the playoffs.
I mean, but it's, I would argue, easier to make the playoffs in the NFL than it is in Major League Baseball.
Not in the NL Central.
Yeah.
Am I right?
The Steelers are solid. They're just solid. And from the outside looking in, you would argue they're pretty well run. And then you actually kind of dive into the micro. Like, I think people nationally probably say, up until the last couple of seasons, the last couple of years have been different. But nationally, people typically talk about the Cardinals. They're like, yeah, they're a really well-run organization. Like, John Mozeliak does a good job. They play the game the right way. They consistently develop guys that can come up through their pipeline and help them at the major league level. And then locally, people are like, dude, they stink. They are awful at all of the things that you just mentioned. And I think the same exact conversation is happening right now with Pittsburgh. And I don't know how they get out of the cycle until they make an actual dramatic change. And it sounds like they're unwilling to do that.
And if I could be honest, if I was Mike Tomlin, I would want out. Like, I want to go somewhere where I can get a legit quarterback. Like, I know you love where you're at. You've basically got the city in the palm of your hands because of how successful you are. But, man, I want out before the city turns on me. And it might be already turning. And honestly, I can't blame Mike Tomlin. You got the best out of Russell Wilson on top of some of these other weird quarterbacks that you've had because your team is just always in the middle. You're never able to draft a quarterback. You're never able to really go out there and bring one in. So you got to stick with what you've got. If I'm him, I'd look at this and say, can I just go somewhere where I can have a quarterback for the next 5-6 years and try and become a team that gets to 10, 11 wins so I don't have to run it back with Kenny Pickett or Russell Wilson?
Dude, Tomlin in Chicago would be a match made in heaven.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
To the city. He makes all the sense in the world for that kind of a fan base. I think he would do a pretty good job with Caleb Williams. I think they would mesh pretty well in terms of their personalities. Like, it makes a ton of sense. Now, it's a really difficult division, but that would make all the sense. But the report has come out as of last night. They're not trading him. The Steelers are not interested in moving Mike Tomlin this offseason. That's not going to be the way that they fix things. I think they're going to continue trying to patchwork things around what they have internally. And, man, when you just look at the roster, I think in previous seasons you could say, all right, maybe we underestimated the roster. They just don't have a quarterback. I think it's the opposite now. I don't think they have a very good roster.
Agreed.
Like, you look at what they have available. The defense is fine, but the defense is not what it's been in the past.
No.
The defense this year was mediocre, and they just forced a bunch of turnovers, and TJ Watt occasionally would have, like, these crazy games. Over the past, 4 weeks, though, he has 0 sacks. In that game, he was invisible. You could have watched that game and not been aware of what TJ Watt's status was, and you could have legitimately asked the question, is TJ Watt playing? He had 0 tackles and 0 sacks in that game. I'm not sure. I don't think he had even a pressure against Lamar Jackson. I don't know what their path forward is. They need to admit what the Cardinals have admitted, which is what we're doing is not working. Our model is not what it once was, we're going to have to take a step back before we can take a step forward. And it doesn't seem like they're willing to do that just yet because they haven't found their rock bottom the way that the Cardinals did 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's also true. And I think what makes it tougher, because I think both organizations got caught in the same spot, which was right in that muddy middle. And it's hard to get out of the muddy middle. You have to pick a path. You can't really patchwork it. You either have to push forward, which is what it's funny. I mean, you mentioned how the national perspective is on the Cardinals. The national perspective always said, yeah, pretty good run organization, but they all agreed they always were missing that one piece that would set them up over the top. Baseball, you can do that. You can really push in, go over the top. Steelers aren't really in a spot where there's like one piece they have to, well, outside of quarterback, but there's not really one thing that you can do that can push that roster over the top. There are multiple pieces that they are missing. So you almost have to enter what the Cardinals are doing, which is either a youth movement or in the NFL a rebuild. And I think that's where the Steelers are. That's why I'm shocked that they're not going to listen to Mike Tomlin. They should trade Mike Tomlin. They should trade George Pickens. They should trade anything that would have value on their roster and just tear this thing down and try to restart and tank down towards the bottom. And I'm not pro tanking, but at some point I do think it is in a organization's life cycle, and I think that's where the Steelers are.
I think you just get stuck. Like, they need to make an aggressive move in one way or another.
Yeah, you got to
and
get
the
a
problem
quarterback.
is, like, this year is not the year to do it.
And the problem in the NFL is, like, we say one move, and we always point to the quarterback. Well, that's a lot easier said than done, right? Like, you're not going to be able to go trade and go get, I'm trying to think of, like, a top 10 to 12. Like, you're not going to be able to trade for, like, a Justin Herbert to fix your problems.
But you can trade up to get Justin Herbert. You can trade up to get Patrick Mahomes. You can trade up to get Josh Allen. And the reason why I know that is because the teams that I just mentioned, other than the Chargers, like, you can trade up to get Jared Goff when the Rams did that. Like, these teams were hyper aggressive to go get the quarterback that they believed in. The Steelers just don't do that. Like, they waited for Kenny Pickett to fall to them, and they're like, okay, we'll go ahead and get that. They decided because Russell Wilson is such a deal on the open market, we'll go ahead and sign him. Because nobody else wants Justin Fields, we'll go ahead and trade for him. So it's these low-cost, low-risk acquisitions at the most important position in all of professional sports. And what ends up happening is what happens with the Cardinals on the pitching market, where they have these low-cost, low-risk acquisitions, but there's no ceiling to any of them. Like, yes, Kyle Gibson had a good season last year. There was never a ceiling to what Kyle Gibson was going to give you. It was 107 innings of, like, a 4 ERA. Lance Lynn, same thing. Jay Happ, same thing. John Lester, same thing. They finally went there to a degree with Sonny Gray, and I think it worked out pretty well for the Cardinals, but it was too little too late. That should have happened 4 years ago, not in 2024 when they were already between a rock and a hard place. The Steelers need to make that big move for the position. Here's the problem. Who are you going up to get? You want Cam Ward? You want Shador Sanders? Those aren't game-changing presences.
The other thing is like, I don't think those teams are trading out.
Year.
Yeah, and well, the other thing too is, like, you mentioned trade up to go get those guys. I can't remember who it was that the Rams traded with to go get Goff, so my memory's fuzzy on who they.
Philly? I want to know. Philly was the Carson Wentz one, so I think that was the same draft where Philly also moved up for them.
But the reason I bring that up is because you almost had to have, like, the perfect scenario coming in place, right? Like, if New England had the #1 pick, that's when you could look at the Steelers and go, okay, go, because they don't need a quarterback. You need to go trade as many assets as possible to move up. I look at this year's draft and I'm going, okay, Vegas isn't going to trade that pick because they want to land their future quarterback.
They got him from Tennessee, by the way. They traded up with Tennessee.
That's right. Did Tennessee have a franchise quarterback at that point?
I think they had Tannehill at the time.
That's right. Yeah. So, like, they weren't going to make a quarterback selection that high in the draft, so they're going to trade down. So that's where you're at right now if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, you look at the top two teams that have picks 1 and 2 this year, they're not trading out of that spot. They're going to take their quarterback. They're going to take Shador. They're going to take Cam Ward. So if you're the Steelers, well, you can't go that path because that's the easiest path to go, right? Is if you get that lucky draw of, hey, the worst team in the NFL does not need a quarterback. Okay, now it is time to just outbid everybody else and go get that pick. That's not going to happen this year.
So, agreed. But, like, last year's draft would have been the time to do it. Go get your Bo Nix. Go get your, what's his face? Why am I blanking
Penix Jr.
Penix Jr. Like, go get that guy.
That was my thought process.
Go make the big move to be able to get up into a spot where, okay, these quarterbacks in a normal draft, like, if Penix was in this year's class, he's probably going #1 overall. If Bo Nix was in this year's class, he's probably a top 3 to top 5 pick. But last year, because the class was so deep at the position, they ended up going into, like, the 10 to 15 range.
But remember who they got, though, before the draft. They got Justin Fields before the draft.
Yeah, but they clearly did not view him as their answer at the position.
I think they did, and they got answers 3 weeks into the season when they were like, oh, this isn't going to work. And then, because remember, they
wanted
delayed Russell Wilson.
Russ was supposed to be the starter, and the reason that Russ ended up getting delayed is because he was hurt. He had the calf injury during training camp, and so that's why they ended up going with Justin Fields as their starter for the first few weeks. But remember, they had announced prior to training camp, Russell Wilson is our starting quarterback, and then because he got hurt, they went with Justin Fields. So I don't think they ever viewed Fields as their guy. I think they just went cheap.
Yeah.
I think they went cheap at the position and didn't want to end up giving up the capital that it was going to take to move up for a quarterback. And they took an offensive lineman. And again, it's these high floor, low ceiling outcomes for all of these things that they decided to do. And this year they're picking 21st.
Brutal.
So
Yeah, you are the Cardinals.
It's tough. They don't have an obvious way out of their current situation.
Yeah,
and given the people that are in charge, they don't make these super aggressive moves, which is just like the Cardinals with John Mozeliak in charge.
They were the 2021 Cardinals this year, weren't they? Where you look at them and you go, holy cow. Because remember at one point they were, like 10-2 or something before they lost 4 in a row. It's kind of the opposite. Cardinals got hot late in that 2021 season.
That was the 17-game winning streak, right?
Yeah, but when you got to the playoffs, you looked at them and you went, you're going lesser and a half, game 1 and 2 if you win in the wild card round? Like, ugh. It's like looking at the Steelers going, really? We're going to do this with Russ in the playoffs?
By the way,
All right.
speaking of a mistake, the Browns ended up trading out of the number 2 overall pick. That wasn't the big mistake. The Titans traded out of that number 1 overall pick, which was Jared Goff. Why? Because they had Marcus Mariota.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
okay.
it's not good to get that top
Tannehill
pick.
felt like that was a little bit
Tannehill
too
was
soon.
post-Mariota,
Yeah.
so they had Marcus Mariota, who they really believed in at the time and couldn't possibly take a quarterback to replace him.
Woof.
You get the number 1 pick, just take the quarterback. That means your guy wasn't the guy.
That's the equivalent of the Cardinals that have Tyler O'Neill and say, we don't need Bryce Harper.
exactly.
And then they're like, oh.
He's Alex's T-Bone on BK. In or out coming up next. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this. In or out? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the best NFC team since 2020. So in this decade that we're now halfway through, in or out, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the best NFC team.
I'm going to say out. I think I would go with the Philadelphia Eagles as the best in this last decade. Win a Super Bowl. You missed the playoffs once, and that was that 2020 year. You've been in the playoffs every single year since. I can't muster up the ability to say the Buccaneers because, yes, I know BK's retort. They've won a Super Bowl.
I was about to say, Eagles did not win a Super Bowl.
I'm sorry, they got to the Super Bowl, yeah.
And have not won a playoff game otherwise.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have to segment them from the Tom Brady to the what happened after Tom Brady. And that what after happened to Tom Brady, you kept making the playoffs, but you were a bad team, or you were a good team in a very bad division.
Why do you have to segment that, though? Because it all happened during this.
Totally, but after he left, they made the playoffs in a bad division every single year. Whereas, like, the Eagles made the playoffs in a pretty decent division every single year.
Significantly better?
I mean, who was the better team with Tampa Bay in that division?
I mean, if the Falcons are up there with the Cowboys?
What?
I would not put that one in the same conversation.
I mean, the Giants and Washington are disastrous.
Yeah, but the Cowboys were one of the best teams in the NFC for the last 2 seasons.
Okay. I mean, you always talked about how they weren't good, but...
Well, in the playoffs, I agree, but in the regular season, they've been awesome. So you have to fight with that team to make the playoffs.
In the past 5 years, Tampa has gone to the divisional round 3 times, at least, and has gone to the Super Bowl and won it once. It's a tough resume to be able to handle.
Yeah, I'm out still. I would lean more towards San Francisco as the team for me. And look, I get it. They've missed the playoffs now twice, but when they've gotten there, they've gotten to the NFC Championship game twice, and they've lost the Super Bowl. So they've had more, it's unfair to say, more success once they've gotten to the playoffs.
It's weird.
But
it's hard to decide who the team is because none of them have an obvious resume.
yeah, and I think, like, if you did this in, like, 3 years, it's going to be Detroit. Like, that would be my clear-cut answer, but you can't say them for this because the first 3 years since 2020, they were not very good. They were awful, actually. It's only been the last 2, but I would go San Francisco. I think San Francisco's the one.
Who do you think has the most wins in the NFC over the last 5 years since 2020?
This is such a big
Who would you guess? I'll give you 3 guesses.
It's going to be Tampa Bay, probably.
Dallas.
For what it's worth, Tampa is 3rd.
Dallas.
Philly is 2nd. Dallas is not. Dallas
The Rams?
No, LA's pretty low on this.
Yeah, they had 2 bad years. Man, who?
But by the way, if we're going to pick a team, Rams should be in this conversation too.
Yeah,
won
amen.
a Super Bowl, lost in the division round, missed the playoffs, wild card, and then wild card potentially more this season.
Man, I'm trying to think who else would be up there and wins. You said it's not Philly, it's not Dallas, so it's nobody else in the NFC East. NFC North would be my
Hold on,
guess.
I haven't used my 2 other
You
bets.
guys have 2 guesses so far.
Is it
I said I'd give you 3.
Okay, Tone.
Is it Minnesota?
No.
Damn it, don't waste it on Minnesota.
Alex, I'll give you one more.
Come on, man.
Oh, I think I know now.
Minnesota
I think I know.
is above the
I use our
Rams
third?
and the 49ers.
Can I use our third?
If you pick another one like Minnesota,
it's in
I will
that
Chris
division.
Rock you.
It's in that division. It's cold. They like cheese. You like that? You like that? You like that?
Yeah, go for it.
Green Bay.
It's Green Bay.
Yeah.
You like that?
13, 13, 8, 9, 11 wins over the last 5 years.
Too bad your quarterback got the yips in the game last night.
So one NFC championship game, lost in the divisional round twice, and then lost yesterday in the wild card round. I think I'm in on this. I think if you told me, hey, you can have anybody's resume over the last 5 years from the NFC, I'm taking the Super Bowl. So I've got to go with one of Tampa or LA. They're the only 2 teams that have been able to do it during the 2020s. And Tampa, I think, has been more consistent in this 5-year stretch that we're talking about. So I'll go with Tampa Bay. I think I'm in on this. Alex, what do you got?
T-Bone, you go, because I've forgotten off of this argument. This one was an extended one, and I just completely forgot what I had at the top. I got too deep in defending not picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right. Well, guys.
You did too.
No, I have one. I was just a little taken aback by that. Guys, in or out, we will not see either the Lions and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl this year.
Out.
Out.
The Chiefs are going, man. I know nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to believe it. Everybody wants this weekend between the Bills and the Ravens to be the Super Bowl of the AFC. Everybody wants to believe it. I don't believe it.
You can't have a Super Bowl in the AFC, man.
Touche. This is going to be the game. Let me clarify. Take two. This is going to be the game that ends up determining who will win the Super Bowl. I don't believe that to be the case. I think the Chiefs will once again be representing the AFC, and I think they will beat whoever it is that comes out of the NFC.
I've got a great picture on my phone of BK being stunned when the Cincinnati Bengals took down the Chiefs, and I'm going to get another one this year of him losing to the Buffalo Bills. I think it's going to be the Lions that'll be in the Super Bowl.
What do you guys
still
think
out on
would
this.
hurt worse? Because I think I know my answer on this, but I'm curious what you guys would think. Chiefs losing in the AFC Championship game against one of those two teams, or Chiefs losing against like the Eagles or the Vikings or something in the Super Bowl.
How dare you not say the Lions' name?
Because the Lions would be different to me. I feel like the Lions are like everybody likes the Lions. They probably win in a shootout.
Yeah.
I don't think that would feel bad.
And they could have Hutchinson back by the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like that to me wouldn't really hurt because
More disappointing to me would be the championship round, because if you get to a Super Bowl and have the opportunity to three-peat, that's not disappointing in my opinion. That's a hell of a run if you're the Chiefs.
See, I think it would be, and I think the Lions even fall into this. I think if you lose in the Super Bowl, it'd be more disappointing.
I think so too.
Because of the fact that it's the three-peat, right?
You're one game away. You beat the team that everybody thought was going to beat you, and then you fall on your face in the Super Bowl. Oh, that would hurt, man. That would hurt so bad. So that's what's going to happen. The Chiefs are going to get to the Super Bowl, and then they're going to lose to the Eagles.
Yeah.
Do you want me to,
like a 13-10 type of a game.
Do you want me to read this tweet once again that you decided to tweet out the other day of why the Chiefs are going to win it all?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't want to, man.
Good. Alex, what do you have for us for in or out?
Oh, it's back to me again. Okay.
Or I can go to the text line.
No,
Your call.
in or out. The Blues will make a trade for a winger instead of a center by the deadline.
I thought about this for mine.
Well, thanks for not taking it, because otherwise I would have had to skip again. Just came up with it.
I'm going to go out. We talked earlier about, the Blues' inability to go on a run, as I've been talking about for the whole season.
Shut up, man.
I just like being right. And
It doesn't happen very often.
I think these two games coming up against Calgary, if they end up not taking care of business, so let's say they only get like 1 point in those two games, I think that's the moment that Doug Armstrong's going to circle on his calendar and go, that's when we became sellers, if you want to call them that. I think at minimum it determines they won't be buyers. And it reminds me so much, this stretch does, of, I don't remember, was it 2 years ago when we talked about that Nashville game where the Blues went up against Nashville, didn't show up, just got clobbered in that game? Last year, okay. And from that point on, we said, I think that's probably when they're sellers, and that's what Army said at his post-deadline
And Nashville was last year in the spot that Calgary is at this year.
Yeah.
So I think the next two games are going to be huge, and I'm out. I don't think they're going to win both of these games. They haven't proven to me the amount of consistency that is required in order for me to believe they'll have two consecutive really good games that they'll be able to finish in. It's not just playing well, it's also capitalizing on your opportunities. I don't think the Blues played a terrible game on Saturday night. They just didn't capitalize. I mean, Jordan Kyrie's a perfect example of this. 7 shot attempts, 0 on goal. All of them were blocked by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I'll say out. Alex?
I'm out as well, but it's not because I think they're going to fall in these next games. I do think they beat Calgary twice. I'm out because I don't think they make a trade for a winger. Frankly, I don't think there's a winger out there that you can go after, because if you're trading for one, it's got to be a guy who can upgrade your power play.
Agreed.
And, if you look around, none of the guys that have been successful in the last 3 years on the power play are even close to being available. You've got to go out there and find your Sam Reinhart. When Reinhart got traded from Buffalo to Florida, he went there and immediately became an impact player. That's what you're looking for, and I don't think that guy's going to be available at the deadline.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Covered Service text line from the 636. In or out, 83 wins will be enough to win the NL Central this year.
Oh.
I'm going to be out because we always do this. We think it's going to be a bad year, and the NL Central stinks, and Milwaukee's going to find a way to outperform what the expectations are. So I'm out.
Yeah, I'm going to say out just because I think everybody's around mediocre, but that means somebody's going to float to the top. So I think it's going to take 87 to 90 to win the division. 83, I can't see.
I think 86. 86 is kind of where I'm hanging out right now. It also depends on what happens with Milwaukee's pitching.
Sure.
If they end up getting positive returns from Brandon Woodruff, they're just going to be the same team again. But if he's not what he was prior to the serious injuries that he's been dealing with, they're going to have some legit questions in the rotation. I say that every year. This might be the year that it actually comes back to bite them, though. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for in or out. Guys, in or out, when all is said and done, the Cardinals debacle will leave a similar taste to the fans as what they have in their mouth with the Rams leaving. Whew.
Jeez.
We've been getting a lot of texts about the Cardinals moving to Nashville over the last few days.
Oh, that's news to me.
There's like,
Are you going to ask that question? I want to warm up.
no,
Oh.
because there's
them
zero
accountable.
reason to believe
Yeah.
that that's going to happen, but we're getting a lot of those texts.
I mean, I
we
think
got another
it's-
one that said in or out, Jeff Bezos is going to buy the Cardinals. I'm out. I don't see a reason to believe that.
We're going to have a great payroll.
Say,
if he's
if
the owner.
Bezos is buying, I am all in on this Cardinals team. Yeah, I'm out on this. I don't know how somebody can say a Cardinals, even like they've gone through some bad years, would ever put the same taste in your mouth of the Rams leaving St. Louis.
That was legit hatred.
Yeah, that's like harsh.
And not only did they leave, they dragged your city on the way out.
No way.
I don't think that's... No,
Guys, I know it's bad. It could be a lot worse.
Big game
right.
for the Rams tonight, though.
Last one here. T-Bone, you're the
Hey,
worst.
big game too. I got some money riding on.
bad
I wore my
person.
shirt today.
I know. I got some points riding on them.
In or out, the Blues will call Nashville regarding the availability of Ryan O'Reilly.
I'm out on this.
Would you?
No, because of the amount of years still tied to him.
What is it, 2?
I think it's 3. Didn't they sign him to a 5-year deal? Or was it a
And
4-year
it's been
deal?
2, right? So this would
This
be
is
your
his
3, so
second
you got
year.
2 more?
I think he's got 2 more.
Yeah, two more.
Like 4.5, right?
Yeah, 2 more after this year at $4.5 million. I wouldn't, man. And like, this is nothing against Ryan O'Reilly because I think he was awesome. I don't think it's the same Ryan O'Reilly.
I have not looked, so I don't know the answer to this question. This was asked on the text line. I didn't prepare it, but can they retain salary?
Nashville, I think they're able to retain salary.
Because Ryan O'Reilly at $2.5 million is something that I would be interested in.
He's
Tell you that
got
much.
25 points this year, but he's a minus 15.
That team stinks.
I blame his
I can't
keeper.
blame him.
I'm with you there, but like, is he the same? Because why you're bringing him there is because he's a good two-way centerman.
Can I have him as the third line center? Yeah. Shin stays on that second line with Holloway.
I mean, if you're asking me, yeah, because then Dvorsky goes to the wing and he gets to work under Ryan O'Reilly.
It's a pretty good spot. A pretty good way to handle that situation. He had 670 points last year. He's at 25 and 39 games this year. So like the offensive production is definitely down, but he's got 12 goals already. I don't know, man.
They'd have to eat money. That'd be the only scenario that I'd be willing to take that on. Is you'd have to eat. I'd have to be paying about $2.5 or $2 million for that going into next year.
Truly, for whatever reason, handling him as if he has a no move clause, so he gets to decide where he ends up going. I mean, I could see why he would say, I would like to go back to St. Louis.
Yeah.
I could also see
That's a
why he would
two-way-
say, I would like to go to Toronto to play for Craig Berube.
That's where I think it's more likely to happen.
That would make a lot of sense to me.
I also,
Boy, we just keep circulating teams he's already been on.
I also think
I
it's
think
a-
Colorado would like him too.
no, they want Jonathan Taves.
That one makes sense.
I think that's a two-way street, and I don't know if the Blues would be as interested in that one. I think if they're going to get somebody,
Sure, yeah.
it's got to be somebody that plays more into line of what their criteria is for a younger player that's there for the
what
long
it's
term.
worth, that's why I asked the question the way that I did. What would you do?
Yeah.
Because I think we know what Army would do. He's not going to be interested in this.
Yeah,
He's another couple of years under contract. I don't think that's the kind of
I
move.
do think that makes you slower too, man. And
For sure.
I think this team is.
Although I don't think it makes you slower than having Sonny.
No, it doesn't.
Sonny
but
feels pretty
to
slow.
me, it puts you in the same position because I think Ryan O'Reilly's about the same skating speed as Oscar Sundqvist.
Sure.
You're going for defensive upside, and I don't know if Ryan O'Reilly's that same guy.
And I think he's probably a better playmaker than Sonny is.
Oh, he absolutely
Even at this
is.
point in his career. So that's
Better
why I
defensively
would.
as well. Like you upgraded in a meaningful way here.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
You upgraded in a meaningful way for this season. The tough part is, what does that mean for the next couple of years? Are you keeping him around? There isn't a no trade clause included,
Yeah, that's
so
what I
you
was
could
just about to
technically
bring up.
trade him again in the offseason and flip him for assets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you this, Army
is
is
a
going to
move.
trade. Army is not going to. He will not treat him as if he has a no move clause.
Yeah.
Zero chance.
That's why it almost makes sense because I can see why everybody's like, okay, we've got to make the playoffs this year. I mean, he brought in an older defenseman in Cam Fowler, which made sense for the team at that point, and he still has term on his contract. I could see where he gives the same response for Ryan O'Reilly, except the difference is offseason is, okay, Dvorsky's ready for that third line center role. Boom, we flip Ryan O'Reilly out of
And if
town.
I got to be honest with you, I think if you're going to make that move and you get him for that cheap, you keep him for 2 more years because that's the ideal person to have on a line with Dalibor Dvorsky. Even if you want to put Dvorsky in the third line center role, you put Ryan O'Reilly with him, who's able to up the play of Dalibor Dvorsky and be responsible enough to cover for him. That's an ideal move for Dvorsky's development.
At $2.5 million, that's a fourth line center type of a contract.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're paying Matthew Joseph $2.5 million.
Is he serving the Bozak role?
That's what I was
about
thinking.
to ask the Steen role, considering Steen is about
sure.
to take over.
I think it's more the Bozak role because remember that third line in the Stanley Cup playoffs. in 2019. Bozak was the centerman with Thomas at the wing.
And Bozak eventually moved to fourth line center too down the road.
That was
after
that 21-22 season where they almost beat Colorado.
A very similar situation, although less money. Bozak was making more money on that contract than what Ryan O'Reilly would be owed in this scenario. I do not think that it's something that the Blues will do, but in the event that he decides I want to go back to St. Louis for whatever reason, I think it could make some sense.
I just convinced myself it's happening.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do that, buddy.
Coming up next, is this the scenario that the Cardinals would typically take advantage of during the offseason, or would they continue to wait things out? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues fell to the Blue Jackets over the weekend 2-1. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Calgary Flames. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Carver for Puck Drop at 7. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we wrap up NFL Wildcard Weekend as the Rams take on the Minnesota Vikings. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30, then kickoff at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So there was a report over the weekend about guys that are continuing to be on the market across Major League Baseball, settling for shorter-term deals. Alex, this comes from Ken Rosenthal. Quote, now that first baseman Pete Alonso's camp has told the Mets that he's willing to accept a 3-year contract with opt-outs, other prominent free agents are contemplating whether or not they should follow suit. At least 2 of them, including right-hander Jack Flaherty and outfielder Anthony Santander, are open to considering short-term deals with a higher AAV, according to league sources that have been briefed on their discussions, end quote. So, Pete Alonso, Jack Flaherty, Anthony Santander, potentially others, depending on how they end up viewing this market as well, open to taking shorter-term deals, kind of similar to what we saw last year with Blake Snell and Matt Chapman, where they hit the market and then Snell ended up becoming a free agent, and Chapman eventually got a longer-term deal with the team that he signed with a year ago. Alex, if this was a typical offseason and not whatever the hell this is that we are currently involved with, is this something that you think the Cardinals could potentially take advantage of? Like, Anthony Santander, to me, makes a lot of sense for them. If they were to move Nootbaar over to center field, you'd have Anthony Santander playing in left field potentially. All right, now you've got a guy that hit, 44 home runs last year? Add real power to the middle of your order. You could convince yourself that the lineup suddenly looks pretty good relative to the rest of the division. They're not going to do that, but in a typical offseason, do you think this is something they would consider?
Yeah, because this is the $5 movie bin at Walmart. Like, this is where the Cardinals always shop. They always find Uncle Buck at the bottom and pull it out, and they're like, I'm taking this one home. It's not going to happen this year. Like, I know this is great, and, like, this is what you should capitalize on, but the Cardinals aren't bringing in anything. Like, they don't want to bring any more money in until the Nolan Arenado thing gets figured out. But, man, like, this is what the Carlos Beltran thing was when they brought him in, wasn't it? Like, it was a shorter-term deal, higher AAV, and you were like, we'll take a chance on an older player and see if he can have...
That was their pivot from
Pujols, yeah. And even Lance Berkman, the year that they won the World Series, they went out there and they got a guy at the back end of his career, and they're like, we'll go get one good year out of it. Like, this is what the Cardinals used to excel at. And now you're talking about a younger player that fits into your team, could have one great year, and then say, cool, thanks for business, we'll move on. But that's only if you're in a winning window. And I don't think the Cardinals, well, I know the Cardinals aren't in that anymore, but 2 years ago, man, this would be an ideal scenario for St. Louis.
Yeah, I think this is something in a typical offseason that the Cardinals could really take advantage of, because what's the thing that really drives them away from some of these star players at the top of the market? Money, yes, but also the years. Like, that was the thing that their big argument was in the Bryce Harper scenario, right? Was, well, 13 years for a guy, like, oh, the back end of that contract. And it's BK's argument, well, I don't care about the back end because the front end year should be really good.
Exactly.
And it's going to be worth the value. So, yeah, I think this is definitely a scenario where the Cardinals would take advantage of in a typical year. And whether that be if it is an outfielder that they need at that time or starting pitching, it's kind of what they did with the Sonny Gray scenario was, why did they land Sonny Gray? Sure, because they needed a number 1, but he kind of fell into their lap, right? Because he was an older player, wasn't ever going to get the 5 to 6 year contract. That's why the Cardinals pursued him. It was less years, a little bit easier for them to get out of in case they did go through a retool, they thought at the time. So I think this is definitely a market that when they are competitive again and are spending again in an offseason, maybe they're not up at the top tier market. Maybe they're not ever going to be up there shopping in that Bryce Harper bin. They can get those guys that are kind of in that tier right below it that will be looking for those shorter deals with a higher AAV.
I guess my follow-up to that would be, is that enough? Because what we've criticized them for in the past is not going out there and getting the top of the market, right? You go to the bar and instead of getting whatever it is that you want to reach for that pour of whiskey that you've been waiting for a year, like it's a big special occasion, whatever it might, maybe it's your birthday, right? And you want to go out and you're getting a special pour for yourself. Now, you're not going to go up to the top. You're going to get like the mid-tier stuff. That's kind of what the Cardinals have typically done. I think Anthony Santander still applies to that. good player, but an on-base percentage over the last 3 years that's hovering around 300, has real question marks about how that's going to age over the years. Not like a strikeout-prone player necessarily, but just a very free swinger. On average, hits about 35 home runs a year, which is really nice. Here's the problem. What happens if or when he has a little bit of a decline in that power? Well, now you have nothing left because he doesn't hit for average. He doesn't get on base. And so it's just a pure power hitter. And you could be left at a 3-year deal potentially. You don't want to be involved with it anymore. So I think we would still be finding a way to be critical of them if this was the case. Jack is the one exception to this rule. I think that might be, whenever they get out of this retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, I think the market that they will find interesting is the injured free agent pitcher.
Oh, boy.
I hear you. It's a scary market to be involved with, but that's where you can go to get some of these guys that have like the bounce back candidates. Jack Flaherty is the perfect example of that. Jack shouldn't be in this market.
No.
This shouldn't be the kind of deal that he's getting. Based on what he did a year ago, he should be getting a deal similar to what you just saw from Blake Snell. That should be the market that he's in. But instead, because there are still clearly concerns about that shoulder, he might end up having to settle for a 3-year deal where he has an opt-out after this upcoming season, dude. That's exactly the kind of market that the Cardinals probably should be involved with moving forward. Because I don't think they're ever going to be in that, like, the top of the market where it was Verlander and Scherzer got that 3-year, $125 million deal a couple of years ago. Like, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And they're not going to do the, what's his face from a year, Yamamoto deals. They're not going to get that long in terms of the term either.
Where I'll be curious to know what they do when it comes to the pitching market in the future is, are they willing to do it? Yamamoto's a different case because his is a wild, like, 10-year deal. Yeah. Is more of the, well, you go like 6 or 7 years with those arms. Are you going to be willing to do those kind of moves? Because you're going to end up paying $30 million for an ace on the market if you're going to do it.
Minimum.
Yeah, minimum. Now, I get not wanting to do the Yamamoto one because to me that was crazy with the Dodgers, but it's the bleeping Dodgers. They've got money, grows on trees in LA apparently. I look at the Cardinals and I say, would you be willing to do the 6 to 7 year one? Because to me, that is kind of where I would still be critical of, hey, if there's a guy out there, and I'm just going to use Flaherty because Flaherty is out there, he should be getting a 5-6 year deal. Would you be willing to do that for that kind of an arm? Because to me, you still should. You shouldn't wait for that market to fall down on you because it's the most important spot in baseball right now. Do you have a 1 and a 2? Because if you don't, you're going to be what the Cardinals have been, right? A team that can win in the regular season but can't do anything in October.
Well, and that's kind of why I like the way that BK phrased it earlier. Like, is it enough? Because I don't even know. Like, the only way these moves are enough for the Cardinals is if they develop the options internally.
Sure,
and that's the one.
On the circumstances.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that they have failed to do. Even if we're talking 5 years ago to where it felt like they had enough pieces, like the pieces that they believed internally were going to help them get to the next level, didn't perform when they needed them to. Like, that's the missing piece right now. All of these are great, and I hope the Cardinals get to that point, but you don't do that unless you get the Walkers and the Gormans and the Quinn Matthews that develop into those pieces.
He's Alex the T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we got to talk about the college football playoff. Ohio State, very clearly in our eyes, the best team in the country right now and a deserving national champion if that's the way that this thing ends up going. However, it's only about a month ago when they lost on the field against Michigan in what effectively became a gimme game. How's T-Bone feel about that coming off of the first season with the college football playoff expansion? We'll get into that coming up at the top of the hour. Coming up next, time for the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's dive into the junk drawer. Alex, what do you got for us today?
Guys, I have officially found the worst type of human.
You?
Wow.
At a grocery store specifically?
Wow. You brought a tone to the meeting this morning.
Yowzers. BK has been a jerk since 9 a.m. Did you wake up and feel like
here today?
Did you wake up and feel like I'm going to ruin people's lives?
A lot of football yesterday, long day. What do you got? Who's the worst person?
What do you got? God, this guy, T-Bone, I'm just going to talk to you right now on our YouTube listeners.
I did say something yesterday.
Jerk. God, you're just a bad person, man.
So we did our family Christmas yesterday, Alex. I'm curious your story. Sorry, I apologize.
No, you're not.
We did our family Christmas yesterday, and I was bringing something to the living room. Asked Kara's sister if she wanted something. And she looked disinterested, and I was like, I don't care. You don't have to have it. She was like, I don't care. It's bad moment for me, and I immediately recognized that was a tone. That was a tone problem. I got to correct that.
So Tanner, let me explain to you who the worst person in the world is.
I'm in.
Sorry.
It can't be you. You're great.
Second person.
Yeah.
The people that decide to leave their houses without cleaning off the snow and ice on the top of their roofs. On the cars.
Wait, why?
So when you're driving, no.
I was like, I don't understand why this is a problem.
No, the people
I'm not a house owner, but
the people that decide to just say, "Oh, I got my windshield clear. I'll just drive." I was driving home. What was it? Saturday night, Sunday morning, one of the two. There was a truck. And you could tell it was covered in snow. It just wiped off the driver's side of the window. The passenger side was covered in snow. The roof of it was covered in just a sheet of ice. And this, you know what? First of all, just merged without looking. But then as he swung and saw me, because he couldn't see out of his little peephole of his window, decided to jerk back into the other lane. And the top sheet of ice flung off. And it scared the hell out of me.
Did you have the girls in the car with you?
No, it was just me, luckily.
Okay, thank God.
I mean, because it scared the hell out of me. Clean your damn cars off.
yeah, I'm with you on that one. That is the worst person. Now it's a little different if there's for my car, it had a little layer of ice on top, so it was tough to get that off. And that I wasn't worried about, but it does start to come off.
Yeah, it does eventually come off. Somebody had that on the highway the other day, and
it comes off.
They had tried to scrape off, you could tell, as much as they did, and then it flew into the air. And we were going down the highway, so they're going 60 miles an hour.
I mean, because my neighbor and I were having this conversation because he's got a truck that he parks in the driveway, and it was covered in, I think it was Friday when that bad snow came back through, and he was up there with an ice pick, and he just kept going at it. And I'm like, man, God bless you. Because there are people that just decide to drive around and be like, oh, it'll melt off sooner or later.
Totally.
And then just brick wall comes right. Man, if that would have hit my windshield, I would have freaking panicked and probably swerved into the barrier.
I'm going to defend the worst person for a second.
Oh, boy.
If you're in a hurry, but you're not getting on the highway, because the highway, that seems ridiculous because everybody's going fast, so it's clean your car off. But if you're just going down the road to some place, like a house or something, okay.
Give yourself a little more time beforehand, and then you maybe won't have to be in a hurry, and then you can clear off your car.
Sometimes, Brandon,
we
can't all be on time.
Did you have time to clear off your driveway to get your car out?
No.
Are you talking about yourself? Are you defending yourself, or are you defending the people that Alex is talking about here?
If I go out there.
Okay, look. When I left on Sunday,
I can smell that from a mile away.
When I
Someone
went to my hotel
crap.
last week, when the big snowstorm came on Monday, I was getting pelted with some ice pellets while I was out there cleaning off my car. So I said, screw this. I'm just getting in the car and going to the hotel. So I could see behind me that all the snow was flying off, but no one was on the roads. And I mostly just wanted to get out of getting hit by sleet.
Would you have been okay if that thing on your roof decided to fall off and it hit somebody's windshield and that person had to swerve?
Well, if there were more people on the road, I would have made sure to take care of it. Nobody was driving in 5 inches of snow.
Other than you.
Brandon, congrats to you, because I opened the show thinking you were the worst person in the world, but now I finish with T-Bone being the worst person in the world.
Has it become harder and more frustrating to drive in St. Louis?
Oh, God, especially with the snow.
The number of people, so it's twofold. One, people that just stop on random off-ramps where you're like, hey, I understand going slower. I've got no issues with you being cautious. You can't stop in the middle of the road, guy. That's not when there's not snow, though. Dude, people are crazy on the highways now.
Yep.
They'll be driving 90 miles an hour. No.
That's that guy.
Really? No
I don't
turn
drive 90
signals,
miles an
and they're
hour.
just weaving in and out of traffic.
I do that on two lane highways. Because people will no, I do it
Were you
because
like swerving in and out with
I go around people that decide to. The people that stay in the passing lane on 2-lane highways, and this is what T-Bone's referencing. People will get in that left lane on a 2-lane highway and go the speed limit. That's not what the left lane is for. The left lane is passing. The right one is for cruise.
If you stay in that left lane, you'll get pulled over. Too long.
Probably. I've never gotten pulled over, and I stay in it sometimes, but I always go like 10 miles an hour
Been
on
pulled
the.
over.
Yeah,
if you stay in the left lane too long, because it is a pass
And
lane,
if you're
he's
doing
right.
the speed limit.
Yeah, if you stay in the left lane for too long, they can pull you
So
over.
what
I got
T-Bone
pulled over on my way
references-
home from Houston. I was like a mile. I was an hour away from home. I'd been driving for 14 hours, and I was in the left lane too long.
So what T-Bone is referencing is on our way to Nashville. I hate people that just get in that left lane and stay there, and so I have to go around them and then get back in the left
All
lane.
I'm saying is I've been in a lot of car rides before. Never felt car sick until my trip to Nashville.
That's amazing.
Drive with Meemaw a little bit more, man.
And I had to sleep on the way back, so I wouldn't.
Oh, I got a picture of it, too. He sleeps with his mouth open.
Oh, dude, that's a Kara move. Kara, we get on the plane, and she's mouth fully.
Don't you always want to just get a straw with some drink and put it in there and just...
The mask mandate was very good for Kara on planes. She was like, I think I'm just going to do this.
She had to
from
get
now
one of
on.
those flexible ones, though, that open when her mouth was open.
All right, coming up next, Ohio State, very clearly the best team in the country, but T-Bone doesn't think they should be deserving of getting to the national title game. He'll explain why next year on 101 ESPN.
pressure comes. Sawyer knocked it out and picks it up. Jack Sawyer headed down the sidelines. Ohio State scoop and score and dagger from 82 yards.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That's what it sounded like on ESPN over the weekend as Ohio State wins 28-14. That was the dagger, the Sawyer scoop and score for the Ohio State Buckeyes. But they were the better team from start to finish. And Alex, they were the better team despite Jeremiah Smith, one of the best players in the country, finishing that game with 1 reception for 3 yards. It was wild the way that Texas was treating him. Now, it was the right way to go about it, in my opinion. They were like triple teaming him on some plays. They were basically saying, hey, Jeremiah Smith is not going to beat us. If you guys are going to beat us with somebody else, so be it. But that dude is not going to be the one that ends up doing it. And I think it mostly worked, honestly.
So they kept him pretty tight down for most of the game.
The running game was not as effective as it has been in the past either. 24 carries overall for 81 yards. They had a long of 22, but otherwise just did not have very many explosives. And yet, Ohio State still found a way. They win 28-14, and they end up going to the national championship game. Alex, I think most people would agree that Ohio State is the best team in the country at this point. And yet, about a month ago, they lost to Michigan, who stunk this year. Like, we're just a flat-out bad team this season. So all year, as we got into this expanded playoff, T-Bone's big point, and we went back and forth on this, it's going to eliminate some of the value. It's going to devalue some of these games that you would typically have like huge stakes in. Michigan versus Ohio State should have been a massive game. And Ohio State losing that game in a normal year would have effectively eliminated them from playoff contention. The stakes could not be much higher. Final week of the season, rivalry week, that's like the big game, right? And they lose. It's over. Except for this year, it wasn't. They get into the playoff, and now they're playing for the national championship game. Alex, I want to get your thoughts on this, but because T-Bone was on the side all year long of this isn't good for college football. This is not what the sport is supposed to be. The regular season is supposed to matter more. Do you still feel that way after seeing Ohio State basically do exactly what you feared somebody would be able to do?
Yeah, I still feel the way I felt when the season started and they expanded the playoff. It's devalued the regular season. Now, not as much as I think I was anticipating, because even some of those top 25 games, like I'm thinking Oregon, Ohio State early on in the year, those are still really good football games. But you look back on it now and it didn't mean much. You know, that game didn't really affect Ohio State. It affected them seeding-wise, but they got into the playoff, man. That's all that really counts. You know, that Michigan game, that loss, didn't affect them. The week prior to that, remember they beat Indiana? Didn't affect either team. Didn't really help Ohio State. Didn't really hurt Indiana. Indiana still got into the college football playoff.
Well, it allowed, if Ohio State would have lost that game, they probably wouldn't have made it to the playoff.
Sure, if they lose to Michigan. But who knows how they play in that game against Michigan if they lose to Indiana, right? Maybe they don't let's just be honest how that game looked. Half-assed, thinking that they can just kick Michigan's butt, and they got chocked by them. So, yeah, I still think it's devalued the regular season to where some of those games that you look back on and you go, you kind of what I thought. They weren't going to necessarily matter. You get 2 mulligans. I think there's going to be years where somebody's going to get 3. In fact, Alabama almost got that this year, to where there was a lot of argument for them to get into the college football playoff, and it just takes away some from the regular season. And the reason that I don't like that is because college football to me is the one sport where the regular season was. This is almost the end-all, be-all, right? Everything matters. You can't make a mistake. You don't have room for a slip-up, a bad slip-up like a loss to Michigan. That's what I loved about college football. That's what made college football special to me. You had to be a great team to be able to win the national championship. And now you get all these mulligans in the regular season to where a team like Ohio State, though I agree, best team in the country still, I mean, they had 2 slip-ups this year. And it may be a little unfair to call that Oregon game a slip-up. Will Howard running when there's no time left, just slip-up. But I look at them and go,
that one would have been okay. Even under the old system,
sure,
that would have been okay.
That one they'd be fine. The Michigan game is the one that I look at and go, really? We're not going to punish them for getting beat against Michigan at home, by the way, against a team that was 6-6 this year? I don't know how that sits with me.
See, it's fine for me. It doesn't bother me at all. Because, yes, it did devalue that game. There's no way for me to argue otherwise. But then it also placed even more value on what their next 4 games were. Mm-hmm. This isn't a team that, like, because they lost that game, ended up in a 14 playoff where they have to win 2 games to be crowned the national champion. They had to beat Tennessee. They had to beat Oregon. They had to beat Texas. And that's just for the right to play against Notre Dame in the national championship game. If you win all of those games, you are a deserving national champion. I'm not going to take that away from you. But yes, I concede the point, T-Bone. The regular season has been devalued. That's what they did by expanding the playoff to 12 teams. But it matters for more teams now. And what I mean by that is, like, in a typical season, you come into the year kind of knowing who the 8 teams are that are really competing for those 4 spots that get into the playoff. And you'll occasionally have a TCU or something like that, or this year maybe Indiana that like kind of works their way into things until late in the season. You'll have those teams that occasionally think, this might be our year, the plucky underdog that's got a shot. But we all know it's unlikely. And then once they get there, we all know they're going to get their ass kicked against whoever it is that they're going up against. Michigan State had that little stretch where they had a couple of seasons as well. This allows for more teams. Boise, Indiana, SMU, Arizona State, Miami for a while, South Carolina for a little while at the end, BYU for a while, Iowa State, Mizzou at one point in time. Like, these teams now truly believe, hey, we can aspire to that. What used to be 4 teams is now 12. And now that is the grading scale for a lot of teams. It's like, if you're a fan of a non-blue blood, the goal for the season has now become get to the playoff. Not win it, because your team probably isn't going to. Even Mizzou this year, if they were everything we thought they were going to be, they wouldn't have won the college football playoff. They might have won a game, and it would have been the biggest game in program history, because it probably would have been played in Columbia against one of these other, Indiana, Boise, whatever, right? That's what matters about this to me. It's why I liked it from the very get-go. So it doesn't really tamp down what I thought this was going to be. In fact, Ohio State is the poster child for why they wanted to expand the playoff, to allow teams like that to be able to get in.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, too. I think it puts more of an emphasis on us getting robbed of seeing a team like Ohio State when it was only a 4-team playoff. Because if the 4-team playoffs, you're talking about this team not being in it, nobody believed in Ohio State. And the fact that they're now going to the national championship, which probably the best quarterback in this matchup, considering he took down Oregon's quarterback and Quinn Ewers, 2 that I believe coming into the postseason for the college football playoffs, were viewed as better than Will Howard. So, like, we would have been robbed of seeing this from Ohio State, for better or for worse, if you stuck with that 4 game. And that's why you expand the playoffs. You want to see more opportunities for teams to pull this one off.
It also, honestly, it gave us better semifinal games. Expanding the playoff got us to, like, I think the 4 best teams. And in previous iterations of the playoff, think about how bad some of the semifinals have been, guys.
Well, I wonder if some of that is more of there just wasn't any great team this year. Like,
Could have been that too. Sure.
I think back to, like, even last year, and I don't even know if last year's were blowouts necessarily, because I think Michigan and Alabama went to overtime. I can't remember how Washington did, but like last year there were like 3 legitimately good teams. Michigan was a really good team. Washington was a really good team. And I can't remember who Washington played, but I remember whoever was
Texas. Wasn't it Texas?
It might have been Texas, but Alabama was even a really good team. I don't know if they were a great
Washington
team.
versus Texas was a 1-score game.
Yeah, and Texas we viewed as a great team last year. Like, there were 3 great teams. I think in years past, what we've seen is we all knew going in, like when Georgia was on that run, or it was, okay, look, Georgia's clearly by far the best team, and then everybody else is in this other tier. I don't think you've had that this year. I think the top 8, I would say, not including Boise, so really 7 teams, were all in line as, hey, we're probably a team that can win the championship. And then there was a clear break, but there was not a, hey, this is a clear-cut great football team. I thought Oregon was that, and then they didn't show up. Yeah. So
we're in agreement with all of that. I guess somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. They say more teams doesn't always make things better. It should have only grown by 4 teams to 8 or 10 maybe even, but not 12. 12 is too many. I've said this all along. I think they should have gone to 8 teams. I think that was the right number. They decided to expand it more because they wanted more money.
Yep.
It's what makes everything work in college football. It's why the Big Ten has 16 teams, including teams in California. It's why the SEC now includes Texas, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Like that. That's what makes all of this work. So far be it for me to complain about that. I do not want them to expand it any further. I think if you get to like 16, now we're getting to a place where it's going to be potentially too much. But right now, I think they've arrived at a number that it's not bad. It's a pretty good format what they have right now. There's tweaks to it. Like if you wanted to go ahead and just have the 4 highest seeded teams be the teams that get the bye, I'm fine with that at this point after seeing what it looked like this year. I do think they should have multiple rounds at the home schools environment as opposed to having that second round be played at a bowl. I think it's just too much travel, and I think they're asking too much of fans to continue to pay for both the travel and also the tickets to these games. But I think it's a good system, what they have in place right now. And it also just includes more fan bases. And ultimately, that's what college is supposed to be, is about the fans. And for years, they've done stuff that doesn't make the fans more involved, and this is finally something that does. So I think it's worked out pretty well this year.
I say we turn it into March Madness and 64 teams get in. Big
they'll
bracket.
get there.
That's
January
basically what
Madness.
the FCS is, right? Isn't it like a
Yeah, they're like
60
20
teams?
24, something like that. They're more than 16, I know.
Let it fly, baby.
Because there's buys. I think it's 24, if I'm not mistaken, make the playoff, which is a lot. I mean,
don't want 24?
BK said he doesn't want to see them expand anymore. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's so coming, but
Oh, it is.
I think 8 would have been. I didn't want to expand
I
it.
think it's a 16-team playoff that they have.
Interesting. 8 would have been the right number because I think you saw
8
this
was the
year.
sweet spot.
You had 4 teams that didn't belong.
And they need to fix that to where the buys aren't to the
Agreed.
conference winners. The
But
buys need to be the top 4 teams.
I think this year showed you 8 would have given you the perfect number because, like, Indiana, no offense, didn't belong. SMU didn't belong. Tennessee, to an extent, didn't belong. And then Clemson didn't belong. Like, right there were 4 teams that never had a shot to win the national championship. And you saw in the first round didn't really belong as a quote-unquote playoff team.
It's 24. It's 24 teams
That's what I
included in the
thought.
FCS playoff. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
It's
insane.
coming, baby.
I love it.
It's coming.
I love
All
it.
right, coming up in 15 minutes, are the Blues out getting out special teams? Alex has an explanation on that for you coming up in about 15 minutes, and if they can find a solution to it. So we'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. But coming up next, NFL quick hitters coming off of a weekend in the NFL that showed us basically a bunch of bad games and then finally a good one on Sunday night. We'll get our biggest takeaways from that next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. For many of you, you're working on those New Year's resolutions. We're a couple of weeks in. How's the progress going? If it's not going as you had hoped, it could be due to a couple of different things. One is possibly low testosterone. It could affect you even, yes, at a younger age than you expected it to. They can find out exactly what's going on for you over at Victory Men's Health. If you just need a little bit more help with those goals, well, they can help you potentially with some weight loss as well. It's a super easy process to unlock your inner champion. You go to victorymenshealth.com. They're going to have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area for you. And when you get to their website, you go up to the top right corner, click book now. And when you do that, put in your name, email, phone number, tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them exactly what it means for them to unlock your inner champion. Means a little something for different for everybody. Could mean help with weight loss goals, could mean help with your low testosterone. Might be you want to learn more about their red light therapy programs. Whatever it is for you, check them out today at Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so wanted to get this news out there. Jordan Schultz, who had the news earlier today, Alex, that Bill Belichick would have been interested in the Cowboys opening had it been open, prior to today. Well, he also added this. Because the Cowboys waited a week to move on from Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones missed on the window to request interviews for candidates on a bye. That includes the Lions' offensive and defensive coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. If Dallas wants to talk to either of them, they will have to wait until Detroit's season comes to an end. He adds, it's a self-inflicted setback, end quote. So that's where the Cowboys stand on their search right now.
Congrats. You screwed up, Cowboys.
They could have made this decision 4 days earlier and would have been able to interview either of those two gentlemen. I'm guessing they probably would at least like the attention of Ben Johnson, if nothing else. Just honestly, to pick his brain, find out, hey, what do you think of our organization? But instead, they're not going to be able to talk to either until potentially as long as after the Super Bowl. So not ideal for the Cowboys.
Yep, and you're going to get stuck with a mediocre coach, and it's going to put your team in a bad position once again.
All right, let's get into some NFL quick hitters coming off of this weekend. Some quick thoughts on the weekend that we saw. Let's start out with the Chargers versus the Texans. First game that we saw over the weekend. Alex, the Texans' defense, I thought, was really impressive. I didn't anticipate a performance like that out of them. But part of it was also Justin Herbert. And I feel like Herbert has become a lightning rod for discussion a bit. This was a post from Sheil Kapadia, who works for The Ringer. Said out of 214 quarterbacks in the playoffs over the last decade, Justin Herbert's game ranks 213th out of 214 in EPA per pass play, which is basically just how good are you on a play-by-play basis, right? Here's my question for you, Alex. Have we overestimated what Justin Herbert is? Was that just a bad game? Was it an excellent performance by the Texans defense? What did you make of that performance by Justin Herbert and what it means for him in the pecking order of the best quarterbacks in the league?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a game that I looked at and I said, wait, Justin Herbert's supposed to be a difference maker? Because I didn't see it. Like, it was a game that I thought both quarterbacks were kind of average in. And Justin Herbert, from what we've seen and what we've been told, he's got the arm to make the plays. And I just didn't think the Chargers, like, part of this was little on the play scheme setup. Like, I just didn't understand how you didn't plan for the Houston Texans to do what they did against you. But it also really showcased the weak spot of Justin Herbert. And I think he was covered up by having guys like Keenan Allen who can make plays out of nothing. Mike Williams when he was healthy. I just don't know how to read Justin Herbert. But, like, when we talk about the AFC and how dominant they are in quarterbacks, I don't even think he's top 5 anymore for me.
Where would you put him? Because I agree with you. I don't think he's in the top 5, but how many people talked about him as if he was top 5 previously?
I feel like a couple of years ago, he was in the same conversation with Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, and Jackson.
And I think that was always too lofty.
I think it was all from just that rookie year.
Yeah, I think he's like in a tier below those guys. Because I think that I think Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady have ruined the way that we talk about quarterbacks. Because they always win, and so we just expect all the best quarterbacks to always advance. And I think it makes us kind of go crazy with Lamar and Josh Allen as well. Most quarterbacks kind of have the development curve that we've seen from Justin Herbert. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. He's also had incompetent coaching for the vast majority of his career, literally up until this season. And he has no weapons other than Ladd McConkey on his offense right now. So I was surprised to see them lose. I was really surprised to see them look as bad as they were on Saturday. It really did nothing to affect my outlook for Justin Herbert, though. I still think he's a top 10-ish quarterback in the league, but I do not think that he's in that top tier with some of those guys that we mentioned. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. He might not, Joe Burrow. He might not even be necessarily on the same category as Jaden Daniels to me.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's a top 10 for me anymore. Like, so like the ones in the AFC, obviously it's Josh Allen, it's Mahomes, it's Jackson. I would have CJ Stroud above Justin Herbert.
See, I think they're in the same conversation to me.
And then I would put Jaden Daniels above him. I would put Matt Stafford above him. I'd put Jared Goff above him. I'd put Jordan Love above him.
Goff's the one that I definitely wouldn't. Like, if you flipped those quarterbacks and put Justin Herbert in Detroit and put Jared Goff in L.A., I think Detroit's every bit as good, and I think L.A. is worse.
Maybe, but I can't take it away from what Jared Goff has done over these last couple of years. And, I mean, Justin Herbert hasn't been able to put up numbers, even if his roster has been depleted.
The thing that changed with me for Herbert is I think if you're a top 10 quarterback, now this varies by extent, but if you're a top 10 quarterback in the league, to me, you can lift the team up around you, right? And I thought this weekend, I don't know. Maybe it's only one game. It's reactionary Monday. To me, I didn't see that from Herbert. I thought that would be the game where even if they lost, he still would keep them competitive. And I get it. He has depleted weapons around him. Totally agree. Although McConkey's a stud.
He's good. Yeah.
I looked at that game and went, man, I don't know if he can lift a roster around him. I think he has to have the perfect roster around him to then be able to get the team where they need to go. That's how I view about Goff. That's why I would agree with BK. I'd probably have him on the same, mostly because I saw what happened when Goff's weapons deteriorated in L.A. He just wasn't the same guy. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just it's reactionary Monday for me, but I don't know if he's a guy that can lift up a roster.
That's fair. I think there's only like 5 of them though that could truly do that. Like I think Mahomes can. I think Allen can. I think Lamar can. We haven't really had to see this because he's had the weapons around him, but I think Burrow can.
Yeah.
Maybe Jaden Daniels, because I think he's doing it right now in Washington.
I think he's doing it.
I think Stafford's in that conversation.
I do too.
Maybe. I think you could argue that. I think he's more inconsistent because of the age. I think he was that guy for sure. That might be the list. That's 6 guys. So I think he's in that next tier of quarterback behind them. All right, next thing up here as we go through some NFL quick hitters here on BK and Ferrario. What did you guys make of the Packers game? We talked about the Eagles earlier today, what that meant for them, but let's go to the other side of it. The Packers end up getting eliminated. They lose 22-10, and honestly, you guys know how much I enjoy Jordan Love and think he's a really good quarterback. I thought he was really bad in that game.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway from it, personally, I think you saw the need for a number 1 wide receiver.
That was mine.
They lacked the weapons, and when they had a big-time play that they needed to be made, it was Malik Heath and Bo Melton out there. And yes, they had some injuries at the position, but Christian Watson is not a number 1 guy. Romeo Doubs is not a number 1 guy. When those guys go down and you're like, oh no, we're missing Romeo Doubs, it speaks to the problem that you have currently. I don't know how they go get that guy. I suppose in the draft could be a spot for them, but I don't think there's necessarily anybody that's going to be available this offseason other than maybe T. Higgins.
I was going to say, if you're them, throw the money at T. Higgins.
He makes a lot of sense in that offense, but that was my biggest takeaway. Did you guys have anything else?
No. I mean, that was mine. I just didn't like the way Jordan Love was playing. I frankly felt like he was playing a little scared, but it makes sense if you're playing a little scared. You lost your best offensive lineman like the first play, so you knew he was going to be under duress. And then that was my biggest thing. You don't have a weapon to throw to. It's not Jordan Love failed. It's the Packers don't give him enough weapons to actually take advantage of his talents.
Yeah, I never felt this way about Jordan Love, going back to our conversation about Herbert and quarterbacks that can lift up their team. I've never felt he's that guy. Granted, he does deserve credit for getting the Packers to the playoffs with that wide receiver core. He needs help. And I don't know if that game last night, I think it was mostly about the wide receivers. I also think his elbow was still hurting. If I'm being totally honest, his accuracy wasn't there, which makes me question if he was still hurt. But he clearly needs a supporting cast. He is a good quarterback. I don't know if he's a great quarterback, but he's good enough to where if you built a roster around him, you can potentially win the NFC with him.
Yep, I'm totally with you on that. All right, next thing up here. A lot of discussion today on the NFL playoffs and how wildcard weekend stunk, and typically you see some pretty significant margins of victory for games like this. The 2024 Packers, last year's Packers, were the only 7 seed that has advanced under the new format. There have only been 2 games between the 7 seed and the 2 seed that have been decided by 10 points or fewer since we've expanded the playoffs. Did the NFL make a mistake in doing this, Alex? Have they expanded it too far to the point where we don't really need that extra team, and it is adversely affecting the 2 seed as well by not giving them that bye? Do you think they made a mistake in expanding the playoffs? Set aside the money, because that's obviously why they actually did it, but for competitive reasons.
Kind of. Like, I don't know if, like, I could definitively say, like, yeah, this is a mistake, because the hype was there. Like, I was excited for all of the wild card games. The problem was the letdown. And it just does feel a lot like you're just letting one of those teams that shouldn't be in the postseason make it to where you get those wild card games that might be a little bit better in terms of matchup purposes, but because of the bye, because you're putting one of that lesser teams in, it just jacks up the whole thing.
My thing with this is always, like, would it have been better for the playoffs to have not included the games between the Broncos and Bills and Packers and Eagles yesterday? You think so?
I mean, yeah. That
Broncos
Bills game was done the second the Bills scored the second touchdown.
I think you're right.
I fell asleep.
My point is, then don't watch. Like, if you didn't like it yesterday, if you didn't enjoy it, what is the downside of having it? Yeah, exactly.
Won me a 7-leg parlay.
I thought it was I thought there would be more interest in that Broncos-Bills game. I thought it would be a little closer than it was. Now, it ended up being a blowout. There was nothing fun about the game that was actually played. But I think if you play that game 100 times, there's probably like 20 where the Broncos keep that thing close and make it interesting.
What? No.
20 out of 100?
Yeah, no,
then
that's
why
too
was
much.
the line as close as it was? The line was what, 8 points?
It was 8.5, I think, when I made my bet.
Pretty big line
It
for the
dropped to
NFL.
7.5.
It is, which indicates, hey man, there's some scenarios here where this doesn't go the way that we ended up seeing it go. But anyways, the Packers and Eagles game, like the Eagles just didn't play a fun game. They play a super boring brand of football. But maybe I'm alone on this. I thought the Packers had a chance to be able to make that thing a game as well. They didn't, but I don't know. I don't have a problem necessarily with it.
The Packers-Eagles ones, like, I didn't have a problem with it because, like, the Packers had an opportunity to get back in that game, and they just screwed themselves over. That Bills-Broncos one never felt like it had a chance, but the hype was there because guess who played the best down the stretch? The Denver Broncos. So the hype was there. Now, if you could tell me you got the Broncos or the Bengals, who would you have wanted in that Bills matchup? I would have taken the Bengals over the Broncos any day of the week.
Sure, of course.
But you didn't.
But this isn't college football where you have a resume that you go off of.
Maybe they should change the NFL
Kirk
football
Herbstreit
that
would
way.
be mad about this, but the wins do matter in the NFL. We actually do allow the teams with the most wins to get into the playoffs.
Well,
I'd be upset with this committee, too.
Jokes on them because Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels had to watch that Steelers Ravens game.
That was
Dude.
brutal.
Wins shouldn't matter,
No,
Kirk.
I'll give credit, by the way. I thought Kirk was really good on that game. He called out the effort multiple times on the Steelers. He appears to have entered his bleep it mode where he's unafraid to criticize.
I've seen the games he's called. Yeah, I don't blame him.
Good for him, man. I think he's gotten a lot better on the NFL side of things.
Al
He
Michaels
was not
leaked
good
off on
early
him.
But no, I think they've expanded too much. Because I feel like every year, this year may be a little bit different because though I didn't think the Packers could beat the Eagles, they were kind of a fun team before Love's elbow got hurt and Watkins. Yeah, who was the injured receiver?
Christian Watson.
Watson. Thank you. I knew Watkins was wrong.
Yikes.
When he got hurt, then it really changed it last week. But for the most part, I feel like every year I've gone and gone, I can't believe that they are putting in the seventh team. Like last year, it was the Steelers. Even this year, if they could have kicked the Steelers out, it would have been great. But I've looked at it every year and felt like, man, these 7 seeds have no chance. Like, I would just rather have the 2 seed get the bye, and then you get even better matchups with the 6 versus 3, 5 versus 4. Those matchups have been better.
Would you feel the same way if last week the Commanders lost and the Packers won? Because in that scenario, the Commanders would have been your 7 seed.
And they would have gotten Philly, which I think would have been one hell of a matchup.
That's what I'm saying is, like, I think there were, like, the Packers ended up getting just hurt at the exact wrong time.
See, the NFC is different for me. Like, the NFC I had no problem with because I thought it was wide open that anything could happen. The AFC was the problem for me. Like,
and that's
Broncos,
just because the top 3 in the AFC are awesome.
Yeah. Well, and the Broncos
top
are
of the
Steelers.
AFC is better than the top of the NFC, and the bottom of the NFC is better than the bottom of the AFC.
See, I would have had no problem if you told me that, oh, man, in this scenario, there are 6 teams and we don't get to watch Washington. I would have went, well, damn, you should have played better early on.
T-Bone is ruthless.
It's why the regular season's supposed to matter.
It's why I hope the NHL doesn't expand.
T-Bone's going to get mad again. Are the Blues just getting out special teams, or is there more here to this story? Alex will explain next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Classic Air Care who have been making people comfortable since 1926 with their HVAC system. The incredible customer service that they have, knowledgeable technicians, and I speak so highly of them because they took care of 2 old units that I had with my homes. And why? Because I was a part of their maintenance agreement. And this maintenance agreement, what it is you sign up for it, and twice a year in the springtime and in the fall, they'll come out, they check the unit, they fine-tune it, clean it, make sure it's good to go for the summer, for the winter. And if there's issues that pop up with this maintenance agreement, they're the first to come out. They get you priority on the scheduling list so that they come out sooner rather than later. And the technicians are just superb when it comes to fixing those problems. So they're always there to take care of you and your HVAC system needs. If you're in the market for a new one, they've got financing options for you, make things so much easier when it comes to those payments. What more could you ask for than dealing with Classic Air Care? So give them a call today. Do me a favor, though. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you and schedule that maintenance agreement today. That's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as they take on the Calgary Flames. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. Tonight here on 101 ESPN, NFC wildcard game as the Rams take on the Minnesota Vikings. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30 with kickoff at 7. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
Hey, with Alex and T-Bone on BK, join the Fastlane and the Riz Show for the Champ Bash at Hot Shots in Fenton next Sunday, January 26th. You'll hang out with members from both shows as they watch the AFC and NFC Championship games. Plus, enjoy bucket specials, delicious foods, tons of TVs, giveaways throughout the day, and the Pick'em Challenge punishment that will be live on site. Champ Bash kicks off with a live 2-hour pregame show at 11 a.m., and the fun continues until the NFC and AFC champions are crowned. Don't miss it this year on Sunday, January 26th. All of the details can be found at 101ESPN.com. All right, Alex, you said before the show today, what's happening to the Blues is not that they're playing poorly necessarily. It's that they're getting out special teams. Mm-hmm. Explain that to me.
Well, they're not playing poorly at even strength. I gave you those numbers on Friday. They've literally been one of the best teams in the National Hockey League since Jim Montgomery took over at even strength. They're getting defeated by their power play and penalty kill. And so I was curious that why the Detroit Red Wings have gone on this 7-game win streak since they brought in Todd McClellan. To me, it's because their power play is clipping at 52%. Now, that's not sustainable at all, but when your power play performs well, and if your even strength game is just average, if best, it's going to put you ahead of the rest. Now, your even strength game has been incredible. Your power play has lost you a couple of opportunities this season to go on a win streak. I went back and looked. The Detroit Red Wings win. The Nashville Predators win. The next game, the Buffalo Sabres lost. That would have been a 3-game win streak. What happened in that game? Buffalo went 2 for 3 on their power play, and the Blues went 0 for 4 on their power play. Then you win that game because of your power play. You beat Chicago. It's 4 in a row. You beat the Ottawa Senators. That's 5 in a row. And then you've got that Columbus Blue Jackets Minnesota Wild stretch. Now, however you want to view this, because I know, BK, you felt a little more like the goaltenders let you down in that one, which is a totally fair argument. But that first one against the Columbus Blue Jackets, you scored 1 power play goal. You gave up a shorthanded goal and a power play goal to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Your special teams doesn't let you down there. You're potentially talking about a 6-game win streak. Your power play has really ruined the opportunity for you to put together a little bit of a run, because in critical moments when you've needed it to tie the game up or take the lead, or you've needed a penalty kill to eliminate the opposition, you've let your team down in that sense.
What would you say is a good power play percentage? Not in like this full-time game sample size. Like, you over any sample you could get 70%. But over time, what do you think is a good power play percentage? I mean,
for me, I think it's probably somewhere around like 20 to 25%. And I think the way that Ken Hitchcock used to always say it is if you combine the power play and penalty kill and it's above 105, that's when you know you've got good units.
The reason why I ask that is because since December 12th, so we're talking about the past month, and this has been where the Blues have been struggling. They're 6-7-2 in their last month of games. So they're under 500 in that stretch. They have a 19% power play, which is 19th in the NHL. If you want to talk about special teams, you know the place they've really sucked?
Penalty kill.
It's the penalty kill.
Yep.
And what do they always say? Coaches always say this. Our best penalty killer is who? Our goalie. The goalie has to be your best penalty killer. Well, they're 32nd in penalty kill percentage at 63% over the last month of play. That's where you've got to improve, dude. I don't know what's gone wrong there. I can't explain it. I don't have the hockey mind for it. But that is the place that if you could circle any one thing, they have got to improve there. Yes, the power play you would love to see get better. I think that's a personnel problem. I don't think they have the one-time shot that they need in order to make this thing a top half of the league unit. But I think they should have the personnel to be better on the penalty kill than they have been. Their defense is pretty good at this point. I would say at least average to above average in the NHL. You should have good goalies. We all believe that they have good goalies. The forwards, you have enough guys that can be good defensively that you should be better on that unit. That's the thing to me that I would circle and be like, why is that at the bottom of the league for a month?
Yeah.
That's losing you games right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing with you on that at all. Frankly, I do think your penalty kill has been just as bad, if not worse, than the power play. It's situational for me, and why I look at it with the power play is you've had opportunities in so many games to take momentum or kill off the opponent. And I think there's been 26 times this season that the Blues have had the opportunity to tie the game on the power play, and they've scored 3 goals in that situation. Like you need to have a power play when it says, hey, this is our moment right here to tie the hockey game up. And then you don't come through with it. But I look at the penalty kill in the same way. The penalty kill has a chance to end the hopes. Like that Columbus Blue Jackets game is a perfect example. Your penalty kill is out there in a 1-0 game, and you cannot allow that to turn to a 2-0 game. What happened? Your penalty kill allowed 2 defensemen to go to the back of the net, and the guy was left all alone in front. So, like, that's one of those where it's like you look at the penalty kill, yeah, the goaltender needs to be your best player on that, but what are you supposed to do when your breakdown is we're going to leave our goaltender out to dry while 2 guys go behind the net to try and play the puck?
Is it a personnel issue? Like,
so I was looking at that to see, like, I don't think it's a personnel issue because
Thomas and Booch are good.
Yeah, and Colton Parayko's on there.
Fine.
Yeah,
Foxa should be a good penalty killer. Toropchenko should be a good penalty killer. And then Broberg and Fowler, I guess maybe like, would you consider moving Fowler off of the unit? Because this is coinciding when Fowler was added to their penalty kill. I don't think that your second PK unit should be that much of a problem for you. But I
mean, I wouldn't take Fowler off it. I think Fowler's a better defender for you than Justin Falk is in that circumstance. So
I'm with you.
I don't know if it's a personnel issue. I don't know if this is just like they're worrying about the 5-on-5 play more than they're worrying about their penalty kill and special teams. But I mean, if you go back and look at when they were good on the penalty kill back in 21-22 season, like your top penalty killers were Colton Parayko, Robert Bortuzzo, and Marco Scandella. So maybe you're lacking in the defensive front. Ryan O'Reilly, Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, and Ivan Barbashev.
Yeah,
those are your penalty killers. And I think you're at least somewhat close with those secondary pieces to what O'Reilly and Barbashev
it's
were.
really just that one, like maybe one of those defensemen have fallen off a little bit, but other than that, they should not be this bad. Because you mentioned the stat of how many times was it? Like 23?
26 opportunities to tie the hockey game.
And they've had 3 that
they've
have
scored 3 power play goals.
The reason why I'm going to push back on this just a little bit, and I apologize for it, if they had scored 4, you're at like an 18% scoring rate, which is basically in line with what they've been all year. So they're like a goal off of what their typical pace is on the power play. This penalty kill, 63%, dude, that's terrible. Like that is brutal. I would be curious, and I don't know if you have the numbers there. When they've got an opportunity to be able to like maintain a goal lead or they're tied.
Yeah.
How often are they giving up those goals?
It's a really good number that I might look at for this next one, so I might have that for you tomorrow.
Because the power play is basically in line with their season averages. Mm-hmm. This penalty kill thing.
Let me see.
It's crazy.
Here's the guys who have been on the ice for the most power play goals against this season. So Parayko and Suter are up there at number 1, 2.
That's really surprising to me.
Falk is 3. So your 3 defensemen are the ones that have been out there the most goals against. Here are the forwards, though. Schenn, Sundqvist, Thomas, Buchnevich, Faksa, Walker.
And they've switched up some of those.
And they've switched up. I don't think they use Schenn and Sundqvist as much.
No.
I think they use more of Faksa, Walker, and Toropchenko.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, to me, your problem, it's Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. They've been on the ice for 15 power play goals against this season. And they're playing 16-28, 15-35.
That's not good. You got to be a lot better in that regard. All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we're going to put a bow on this thing, and all week long, we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of lawn tickets to see Chris Stapleton. That show is coming up the week after the 4th of July, July 11th, at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater, and we're going to give you a chance all week long here on BK and Ferrario and on the Fast Lane to score a pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton live. So stay tuned for that. We'll give you your opportunity next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, the reason why we exclusively bet with the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois is because when you went over there, you're going to win more money. Betting is hard, trust me. As the guy that ends up losing all the time with our sports betting here on the show, I need to win more whenever I do get my wins. And tonight, I think I've got one in me. I like the Rams on the money line, Alex. For the Fast Lane Pick'em Challenge, we really need the Rams. So go ahead and back us with this. Rams on the money line plus 120. I also, if you want to go with the prop bet for tonight, Puka Nacua at plus 750 to be the first player to score tonight. Puka Nacua plus 750 over on the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois. Those are my two picks for the game this evening.
I love it. Whether you're just going straight up money line picks or you're putting together those big parlays, Circa Sports is keeping as little money as possible, and they are so confident in this, and this is why I love using them. They tell you to go check out those other lines on sportsbooks because they know that you'll be coming back to Circa Sports Illinois. So for whatever your betting needs are, download the Circa Sports Illinois app today. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101ESPN app is always presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can always check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. During the show, you can watch us there. You can even check it out, watch it in its entirety after the show. Alex T-Bone goes back through. He makes this super easy for you. If you want to see like when each segment was, he'll go out and chop it up. So you can just click on the YouTube video and then it will show you where we talked about what. If you're interested in a specific topic, you can go find that for you over there on YouTube.
Don't let my hard work go to waste.
The other person on this show doesn't give you enough credit for how hard you work.
That is correct. All right, Alex, coming up here in just a minute, I'm going to give our listeners a chance to score a pair of lawn tickets to see Chris Stapleton on July 11th. That's going to be at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Tickets for that are on sale on Friday at 10 a.m., but you'll have a chance all week here on BK and Ferrario and on the Fast Lane. So be sure to stay tuned for just a couple of minutes. We'll give you your chance to win those here in just a moment. Tonight, the Rams against the Minnesota Vikings. It is a game that you'll be able to hear right here on 101 ESPN. Pregame starting at 6:30. I do like the Rams in this one. That's who I have for the Fast Lane Pick'em Challenge. Alex, what do you like in this one? Rams are a 2.5-point underdog in this game against Minnesota.
I like the Rams in this one. I don't think it was good vibes for the Minnesota Vikings the way they ended the regular season. I think LA is going to have obviously a lot of motivation from what's going on in Los Angeles right now with these wildfires. I like the Rams on a money line play to win this tonight.
Yeah, I like the Rams as well. I lean towards.
Where you were leaning.
I lean towards the under in this one. I do think this is going to be more defensive than we think. Originally, I kind of thought, okay, Rams might be able to put up some points. Maybe Darnold has a bit of a bounce back game. This one hits the over. I'm now leaning towards this going to be under. I think this is going to be like a 23-17 game.
Yeah, I love the over in this one.
I love the under in this one. I think Sam Darnold chokes in this moment, and I also think the defense on both sides play tight.
I go the other way around. I think that Matt Stafford's going to beat the blitz a few different times. I think Puka's going to have a couple of explosives, and I think Darnold has a little bit of a bounce back game, but it's not enough, and the Rams ultimately come out on top.
Did any of these games hit the over?
Yes.
Which one? Because I feel like all the bets that I did was the under.
I think the Chargers game actually ended up going over.
Did it? Okay. The Ravens game, that was the under.
And I think everything else went under.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did a lot of under bets this weekend.
We're due for an over in tonight's
always
game.
plans out well.
All right, it is time for you to win a pair of free tickets now at 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ticket details for the Chris Stapleton Show on July 11th can be found at 101ESPN.com or your 101 ESPN mobile app, or you can just tune in all week to BK and Ferrario in the Fast Lane. If you are texter number 101, you can answer the following question correctly. You are getting that pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton on July 11th. Earlier today, we were talking about the best NFC team over the last 5 seasons. Who did I say was the best team in the NFC over the last 5 years? If you have the correct answer to that, your texter number 101, you are getting that pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton on July 11th. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.